It's now 7 p.m. It's March 16th, March break, so I hope all the kids at home are watching on TV. Probably not. If you are watching at home and you want to follow our agenda, if you go to the website owensound.ca and then click on the box that says where you want to live, and then click on the next box that says council, and then the next one, which is council minutes and agendas. You can find the agenda in there on today's date, again, March 16th. Council started off this afternoon with a special meeting at 4 o'clock and then some in-camera things, and here we are now starting. I need a declaration to move into the, I guess I don't. I guess next is number 3 on the agenda, faith blessing. Is Pastor Brian Drysdale present? We don't see him. Okay, if we could have a moment of silent reflection. Maybe proceed. Thank you. Additional items tonight. Councillor Gregg.
I do have one, thank you, Mayor Body, regarding the budget for 2015.
And this way, Councillor
Yes,
Thomas.
I have one, Your Worship, about an upcoming job fair.
Mr. Becking.
Yes, Your Worship, 2 items, both of which relate to frozen water mains, one of which is an update, and another is a suggestion for Council's consideration.
And anyone else? Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just an additional item, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee minutes from March 12th. They're on Council's desk.
If I miss it, maybe we'll put those in when we're doing the other committee reports. Otherwise, we can do it at other business. Thank you. Disclosure, pecuniary interest, and the general nature thereof. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I declared a pecuniary interest on a matter on the in-camera agenda as it involves my employment.
Great, thank you. Number 6A is confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting from March 2nd.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 2nd, 2015 as printed be adopted.
And Councillor McManaman, I see your hands up.
Sorry, Your Worship, but there was just one correction. I think I'd already sent it to the clerk, but just for the record, 11C was moved by Councillor Thomas, not myself.
And so with that amendment, I'll approve the minutes. All in favor? It's carried.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the strategic planning working session number 2 held on March 2nd, 2015 as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? And that is carried.
And moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that City Council now go into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Great. And all in favor? And that is carried. So we're down to number 8 on our agenda, which is public meetings. First one, 8A, being zoning bylaw amendment number 16, and Pat Realty Limited, care of Peter Van Doler, with regard to the Grey Bruce Hospice. Bringing a motion to adjourn. We're into the public meeting.
I have
Don't
that
have
the
to
regular
stand.
council meeting of March 16th be adjourned for 3 public meetings respecting the following: zoning bylaw amendment number 16, 2015 city budget, and building permit fees. And that the regular well, that comes later.
Okay, and all in favor of that motion? That is carried. This is mine here? Okay, good. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the corporation of the City of Owen Sound before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the corporation of the City of Owen Sound to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the corporation of the City of Owen Sound before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we now declare the meeting open. And comments from the clerk.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Notice for this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the city's website, and posted in the Sun-Times on February 20th. The comments that were received prior to the agenda being published are included in the agenda package. Since the agenda was published, comments were received from Mike Dyer. These comments were circulated to council and the media and will be added to the agenda for the public's review. Those in attendance for this public meeting, please sign the sign-in sheet for communication purposes. The sign-in sheet is located just outside of council chambers. The personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act. The information collected will be used to complete the zoning bylaw amendment process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to myself.
Great, thank you. Ms. Coulter, making the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city has received an application for an amendment from Anpet Realty Limited for lands located at 1725 10th Street East. In general, the zoning would permit a residential hospice on the subject lands as well as parking accessory to that. In terms of the process to date, on January 16th, we provided pre-circulation package was submitted to the city and comments were given back on February 3rd. On February 10th, we had the formal application. On February 12th, council had received a technical report and had resolved at that meeting to proceed to a public meeting. Which brings us, on February 20th, we gave notice, as the clerk indicated, of the complete application as well as the public meeting today, which brings us to the public meeting March 16th. Following this, council will consider a zoning bylaw amendment. There has been a site devoted to this zoning application on the city's website with all the reports and information located there. So the subject property is a triangular piece of property. It's 1.3 acres or just over 0.5 hectares in size. It has 143 meters of frontage on the south side of 10th Street East. The site is relatively flat and is bordered by some mature trees. The topography rises towards the Grey Bruce Regional Health Services located to the south. So the proposed amendment has a few parts. The first would be to amend and add a special provision to the R3 zone to permit a long-term care facility, specifically noting that a residential hospice would be permitted within that definition. We would establish site and building regulations for that use, and those have been provided. And they are the same as for an institutional use in the R5 zone, with the exception of the exterior side yard setback. With respect to parking, building on our knowledge and experience with the current hospice, we're recommending that parking requirements include parking for 30 vehicles for the hospice at this site. We're proposing we would remove the H as part of the rezoning, and that relates to the capital cost recovery being paid to the city, and there is a bylaw that authorizes the execution of that agreement that would allow the collection of those fees at the time of site plan approval prior to building permit. So based on council's direction with respect to the amount of the fee, we're allowing that to be deferred to avoid a subsequent need to have another application to remove the H. In terms of the provincial policy statement, all decisions under the Planning Act are to be consistent. Staff support the statement of conformity with the PPS provided by the application. The site is within a fully serviced urban area. It optimizes the use of land and existing infrastructure toward creating a strong, healthy, and livable community. In terms of the official plan, the property is designated residential. More specifically, it's low-density residential within the Sydenham Heights planning area. Residential is to be the primary use of land. However, certain secondary uses of a non-residential nature, specifically including long-term care facilities, are permitted subject to certain criteria. Those were addressed in detail in the technical report. The site is currently zoned R3 with the holding provision and subject to that special provision. It permits singles, semis, duplexes, as well as places of worship and public parks. In terms of next steps, the focus for tonight's public meeting is to hear from the public any comments they would have, and then council would consider the zoning bylaw amendment. Based on council's discussion at the time of you received the technical report, we are prepared, your worship, with a bylaw tonight if council so wishes.
Great, thank you. So the next step is comments from the public. Is there anyone in the public gallery that wishes to comment? I see Mr. Lovell wishes to comment. Sure. Just get you to push the button so the little red light comes on and we can hear you. Perfect.
I'll get good at this eventually. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I wish to affirm that my children, though at home, are probably watching. There was some discussion over the budget and who was going to be the spokesperson tonight, and when they couldn't come to agreement, we decided to keep them both at home, so they are watching. On behalf of the volunteer board of the Residential Hospice of Grey Bruce, our team of nurses, personal support workers, volunteers, care providers, and most importantly, the patients and families we serve, I'm pleased to speak in favor of the proposed rezoning application to allow for the construction of a residential hospice on the property being discussed. I would like to take a moment, if appropriate, to thank staff for all the work that they've done on this and for their counsel as we've moved forward through this process. For many of us, it's very new, so we appreciate the support of the city in this regard. In my previous deputation, I referred to this land as ideal from our perspective, and I just want to take a moment to expand on what that means in terms of patient and family care for us. First, it's ideal because of its proximity to the Owen Sound site of the Grey Bruce Health Services. Of our 151 patients to date, 78 have been transferred to the hospice from a hospital site, primarily being the Owen Sound one. The convenience of proximity will also allow for ease of transport for many of those who come into our care. Additionally, this proximity allows for physicians who work at both locations similar ease of access to the residential hospice. Regional care in Grey Bruce requires a necessary collaboration with system partners and acknowledgement that we all work as part of a care team. In some ways, this location symbolizes just that. It is ideal also because it is located close to amenities for families like quick service restaurants and dining establishments, the mall and other services that people may seek access to while ensuring that they are taking the time necessary to care for themselves. But it's also ideal because the care we are responsible providing is expert care. It requires its own space purpose-built for exceptional clinical care, while at the same time creating an environment that is home-like, comfortable, and contributes to patient dignity. This is incredibly important to us. In the time since our deputation, a letter to the editor appeared in the Sun-Times suggesting we continue to co-locate, and I'd like to address why we are pursuing a freestanding hospice. End-of-life care matters. How we care for our most vulnerable patients and families in their final days makes a difference in how a family may experience the death of a loved one. We need to be able to design our patient suites with this kind of care in mind, to be able to create a room that puts at the center of our work their comfort and supports the care that will be provided at the bedside. There's no existing location that contemplates this, and we have one chance to get it right. With this property, we can do just that. We can create a space that uniquely and equally designed for expert medical care and family comfort. Finally, having spent some time talking about what happens inside a hospice, I want to assure residents of Owen Sound and members of council that what we hope to construct will on the outside be consistent with both the philosophy of residential care and community expectations. The hospice we envision will take into account the surrounding features, taking advantage of the trees lining the boundary of the lot and erecting a structure that seeks as best as possible to be home-like in its appearance. It will complement the buildings around it and become a connection to the community that we support in both its service, function, and appearance. It will not be austere, it will be inviting. And I commit to you that we will make you proud to have supported this change. Once more, I thank you for all that you've done for our project and for what I hope will be the next step in our shared journey.
Great, thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak? I'm seeing none. Okay, so I will declare this public meeting closed with regard to the Grey Bruce Hospice. Moving to 8B, which is our next public meeting, which is with regard to the 2015 city budget. I declare that public meeting, or this next public meeting, open. And I'll read the same thing again. If a person or public body, no, don't have to, only have to read it once? Great, thanks. It's not often, I apologize, it's not often we do 3 in a row, so it's, this is great, thanks. Go ahead. You have to, yes, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, notice for this public meeting was posted on the city's website on February 23rd and in the Sun-Times on February 27th. No comments have been received to date respecting the budget. Personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act. Information collected will be used to complete the budget process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to myself.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ritchie, you're presenting?
I am, your worship.
Go ahead.
City Council started budget deliberations with a proposed increase for 2015 of 5.22%. Through a series of 4 meetings, the proposed budget presented this evening would see an increase for 2015 of 4.41%. Major increases in this budget were due to reduction in OMPF funding, Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant of $192,000, anticipated increase in wages for police and fire of $350,000, anticipated increase in wages for all other city staff of $150,000, increased costs for benefits from our carry of roughly $200,000, increase in the budget for transit of $120,000 with some changes council approved during the 2014 year. Major decreases in this budget were due to reduced costs of WSIB coverage from the time when the city was a Schedule II employer, and reduced debenture payments as one debenture has been fully paid off in 2014. Many of the public wonder where our city tax dollar goes, and here's a breakdown by division of where it goes. I won't bother to repeat it, but I'll just leave it there for a few minutes for it to be scanned by the public. The city tax notice includes 3 separate components. Certainly the city component, the part that the city budget supports, is 60% of an average bill. And the education portion administered by the province is 20%. And the county portion that supports the county budget is 20% for the city of Owen Sound. Combining those with the information we have available to us at this time, the average increase for budgetary purposes for city of Owen Sound property will be approximately 2.1%. Individual properties may vary depending on the tax class you're in, as well as tax policy decisions that council will make in the proceeding in the coming several months. And that is the presentation for this evening, your worship.
Great, thank you. So seeking input from the public. Anyone here wish to comment on the budget? I see nobody moving. Give it a second chance. Anyone want to comment on the budget? And a third time? No, great, thank you. So I'll declare this public meeting with regard to the 2015 city budget closed, and then move on to 8C, which is building permit fees. I declare this meeting open. I believe I go to Ms. Bloomfield next.
Yes, through your worship, notice for this public meeting was posted on the city's website on February 23rd and in the Sun-Times on February 27th. No comments have been received to date respecting building permit fees. Personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Building Code Act. The information collected will be used to complete the building permit fees process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to myself.
Great, thank you. Ms. Coulter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Kevin Hicks, the CBO, is also here tonight if council has any questions, so thanks for being here. The proposed building permit fee changes were presented to council at your January 12th meeting as part of the Bylaw Coordinator's 2015 Fees and Charges Report. It was noted at that time that legislatively a public notice was required before any changes could be made to the building permit fees. So the fee changes can be summarized really as in 4 components. Recognize the Ontario Building Code with respect to demolition permits. There's 3 types of or sizes of structures in the building code, so we've made our fees bylaw have a different fee to match each of those rather than trying to figure out the cubic meters of the building being demolished with a fee related to that. We're introducing efficiencies, so we're combining the construction and plumbing under one permit if you're doing both. Obviously, if you're doing construction without plumbing, you don't have to do that, or plumbing without construction. Ensure that each permit tracks when occupancy is given rather than the final inspection deposit. So the final inspection deposit is being eliminated from the fees bylaw in favor of an occupancy permit, which is what is contemplated by the Ontario Building Code.
Good, thank you. So again, seeking comments from the public. And seeing nobody moving, I'll ask a second time, public comments with regard to building permit fees. And a third time, oh, good. I'll declare this public meeting closed. And go back to Deputy Mayor Wright.
Put a motion forth that the regular council meeting of March 16th, 2015 be reconvened.
And all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I thought you were voting.
I was, but I had a question. I'm just wondering, Ms. Coulter had mentioned for the zoning bylaw for the hospice that there is a bylaw prepared tonight if it's council's wish to move it forward to tonight's bylaws. And I'm just wondering what the process would be. Is that a motion from council? Sorry, yes.
Yes, through your worship, it's already listed as as 2 of the bylaws to be passed tonight.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So they're there. Good, thank you. I believe we're down to number 9, which is deputations. And I get to make the first deputation with regard to facade grant presentation to Mr. Hall, who is, I see is present, with regard to his property at 832, 840 2nd Avenue East. So I think I'll come down to the podium there. So for the facade and structural improvement program was approved by council in 2000, so 15 years already. The program provided for incentives to property owners and tenants who improved the facade of their building and/or complete structural improvements necessary to maintain the safety and integrity of their building. The guidelines also encourage the restoration of the original facade appearance in the downtown and revitalization and improvement of the rear facade of buildings. The program is also intended to help heritage properties that are designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. Dr. Everett Hall is in attendance, obviously, this evening to receive a facade grant for property located just north of City Hall, right next door here, on 2nd Avenue East, which is the location of the Owen Sound Community Living. In 2013, a facade grant to help repair the brickwork on the front facade was approved, and we've got pictures up there on the screen if you look at the beautiful brickwork that is featured in this building. Tonight, the city is presenting a facade grant to assist with the replacement of the 9 windows on 3 sides of the building. The new windows are sized to fit the large original opening that was previously boarded up at the top, and you can see that in the photo. Notice the decorative element of each window. The work carried out under this grant has improved the facade of this building and helps restore the original facade appearance and helps beautify downtown. We thank Dr. Hall for your commitment to maintaining your building in the city's downtown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a couple comments?
Please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As you can see from the pictures here, I didn't realize these were going to be up, but the windows in this building, I believe, were the original windows when the structure was built, which is sometime in the 1800s. Needless to say, they weren't very energy efficient, and the way of trying to improve that was to cover them up with plywood in the top half, which of course made them look very ugly. So when the window replacement was part of a project both inside and out. We totally renovated what were 2 commercial offices inside, created 2 residential units, and by putting in the new energy efficient windows, we exposed the nice woodwork and the valance, as well as we have apartments with 10-foot ceilings inside, which are very modern apartments, but still kind of have that heritage feel to them. So we now have a student from Georgian College that came from Kincardine living in one, and a retired couple from Exeter living in the other. The Van Dolder home team did an excellent job of doing the workmanship on this, and I would like to thank them for their work on it. I would also like to acknowledge and thank Kim Wepler for keeping me pointed in the right direction on the paperwork. I always need somebody to help me in that bit, and she was very helpful to me. So on behalf of my wife Marilyn and I would like to thank City Council for their continued support of this project. And I think as you go down through our downtown core, you can see where this money has been used. I think it really helps to keep our downtown area looking very vibrant. So again, thank you to Council for your continued support.
And our next deposition, 9B, is John Cottrell, CAO, and Dick Hibma, Chair of the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, presenting their 2015 budget.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of council, your worship. Real privilege for me to be here this evening. Significant feeling of deja vu. However, it's much nicer being on this side. At this point in my life, I'll just leave it at that. Significant turnover in councils all around the watershed that we represent. And that represents a significant opportunity for presentations, deputations to municipal councils as we go through our budget process, and to share a bit of what we do and to educate councils in terms of our mandate, our roles, responsibilities, and financial resources required to undertake all that work. So I'm going to turn that part of it over to John Cottrell, our CAO, but before I do that, I do want to express my appreciation to this council for their continued support by appointing me as your public representative with the Conservation Authority Board. It's been something I've been at for some time now, and I do very much appreciate that continued support from this council, your support of the authority itself, but continuing to appoint me is something that I hold very dear and very much appreciate, so thank you for that.
So Dick, just before you leave the microphone, do you want to tell us what else you're sitting on with regard to conservation, just to fill us in on the...
By way of a little bit of history, in the time that I've been the chair of the Grey Sauble, I've been on the board of the Provincial Association of Conservation Authorities, Conservation Ontario. Served for 5 years as a vice chair, and for the last 9 years as chairman of that provincial association as well. And we have our AGM coming up on the 30th of this month, and if the stars align properly and things go well, then I can continue that into my retirement, which is about a month away. So I'm looking forward to changes in life. In addition, I've spent time on a couple of committees associated with the IJC, their Upper Great Lakes study. I was on a public interest advisory group associated with that effort. And subsequent to that, on a task force that looked at the adaptive management process and how that methodology could be applied to measures that might be taken by various stakeholders in dealing with the variation in lake levels, fluctuations over time based on all kinds of interesting factors. So that's been a significant exercise, and I've also been involved in an effort by the Ministry of Natural Resources several years ago assessing the availability of aggregates across the province, and now sit on a separate board that has established a preliminary set of standards for siting and operation of aggregate operations. So there's always something more to do. So that's just a little bit of what's kept me somewhat engaged, and you can tell where my focus is. It's very much about wise use of natural resources in alignment with the mandate of conservation authorities across the province.
Great, thanks. Any other questions before? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to John. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Your Worship, members of council, staff, and fellow friends of Owen Sound, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about our draft budget. The budget itself, the whole budget, is showing a $500,000 increase, but the majority of that is covered by special reserve accounts, which will pay for the capital projects that are listed on page 7 of the budget. We were able to hold the municipal levy portion of the budget to 1%, or about $12,000, of a total budget of $3.1 million. So we're quite pleased that we're able to hold it to 1%. In terms of the levy to the 8 member municipalities for the City of Owen Sound, this increase is actually about 1.6%, or $3,700. The majority of this year's operating cost increases are to cover cost of living increases, related increases to cost of benefits, WSIB, that sort of thing, the same things that you're fighting with as well in terms of costs to run your organization. We're hopeful that our revenues will increase in 2015 as well. We receive money through tree sales, timber harvesting sales, gate receipts to our day use areas, and increases from our permit fees and planning fees. Our capital project list, which is on page 7 of the budget, is quite long this year, but it does not depend on municipal levy for its implementation. Some of the projects are dependent on the receipt of provincial and federal grants or from donations from other sources. Of particular interest to this council is repairs to the Owen Sound Mill Dam. This project has been on the books for a number of years and is dependent on a matching grant from the Ministry of Natural Resources. We hope to hear early this summer whether or not we're successful in getting that grant, and if so, the work will proceed in the fall. We are present securing the final approvals from M&R for the work and are working to complete tender documents. So we hope to go out to tender fairly soon and have contractors ready to roll once the fall season comes along. In closing, I'd like to thank you for your past support and hope that continues in 2015. We also wish to thank city staff for an excellent working relationship and support, especially as it relates to our plan review activities, our shared tourism initiatives, and our community relation department activities. So I'd be pleased to answer any questions you have on the budget, but again, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight.
Thank you. Questions? Looking left, looking right, don't see any hands going up. No? Good sign.
Great.
Don't see any questions coming your way.
Thank you,
That's
Your
great.
Worship.
Thank you very much. Next on the list is 9C, Francisca Dobbin, Executive Director of United Way Gray, or Bruce Gray, excuse me, with regard to the 2015 Seniors Fair.
There we go. Thank you. Mayor, Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you about our event. This will be our 7th annual Seniors Fair, I believe. Always has been at the Bayshore Community Center, and we always have a great time with your staff. So I just wanted to go over what the event is. So last year we had about 1,300, 1,500 people go through the event, through the day, from 10 till 3. It's a busy, busy day, lots of people. We do gift bags for about the first 300, carnations for the first 300 in attendance, so it's a lot of fun. Our focus for the event is community resources and information, so we have a lot of not-for-profits, a lot of community information, a lot of what's going on out there. Our focus is the prevention of elder abuse through engagement, so if people understand what resources are out there to them, they can protect themselves from potential elder abuse as seniors. As well as opportunities for recreation, ability to participate in our community, and it's very social, and as you will see, it's full of entertainment. So that's just a shot of some of the bags, and they're all piled up, and Seasons is one of our providers of the bags. We have different organizations with reusable bags. We run free seminars throughout the whole day, so we do take over the entire Bayshore, except for the arena floor. So we work with the OPP on safe driving and fraud prevention, as well as the presentation from the Alzheimer's Society, Finding Your Way. As we know, our dementia rates are on the increase, so this is to help people in a quieter environment access information. And the CNIB is coming through with a seminar on your eyes and looking after your eyes. And they're all free, open to the public. They all run at this one time. So these are some of the people that have come and exhibited at our show. These folks are from Toronto. They came with some government agencies to showcase what was really fun, and the expressions on their faces. This was the day after the provincial debate from the provincial election last year, and they had watched it on Rogers, and were like, wow, you guys really get into everything. So it was kind of fun to educate Toronto people that, we really care about our community and are working on things. So it was interesting for them. Of course, 211 is at everything and anything we do. There's the Alzheimer's Society, the legal clinic with all the issues that they deal with. And again, like I said, we're preventing elder abuse by educating people on what's happening. The Alzheimer's Society, another booth. Of course, our Legions, very important. And here's Andrew Howlett, who is explaining computers. That was part of the feedback we got from, because we do surveys, exit surveys with those in attendance, what's missing. And they said, we need somebody to explain all the gadgets to us. So this is Andrew overly explaining a gadget. And he brought a drone. It's like, don't bring drones to the seniors fair. And Dr. Greg Zoldi, of course, explaining things, iPads and gadgets and everything to do with chiropractor, because it's very much about wellness as well. We have lots of entertainment, so we have singers, and we have the seniors themselves are all part of the show. They're engaged as to, it's their show. What do you want to see? What do you want to showcase? What are you doing that you want to showcase with us? And as you can see, we draw quite an audience, including Bill Walker, who's getting his character taken. And for a $100 donation, I'll show you the picture that resulted. So, Grey Roots is there, demonstrating some of the things that they do out at Grey Roots with their programming. This is the Sweet Adelines are there, and we have the Salvation Army therapy dogs, which go into the homes and the residents, and it's a lot of fun. It's an Irish wolfhound, so it really is quite a large dog, and he's my favorite. But it's just a real sweetheart of a dog, and just talks to everybody and is comforting in the care homes. So we're looking for two things from City Council tonight, or not necessarily tonight, but to consider. One, we're asking that City Council to declare June 3rd as Seniors Day in the City of Owen Sound, and we'd like you to make it a Transit Wednesday and put the buses on for free so we can move people around, not have to worry about so many cars down at the Bayshore, as well as encouraging everybody to come down and not have transit issues as a barrier for them to participate. So that's my...
Councillor Lemon, question?
Yes. First of all, I think the concept, now that we've got the new buses in service, that there's merit to that to get some people back on the bus who stopped using it when we were running yellow buses instead of our blue buses, because we did lose a lot of riders. And this would make it fully accessible to people independent of their financial needs. And I was going to suggest on that day, there currently is, I don't believe, still a stop at the Bay Shore. If memory serves me right, that hasn't gone ahead yet, but maybe the bus could also come down into the Bay Shore parking lot and go across. It wouldn't take any longer. And since the stop currently for that area is down by the Inn on the Bay, this would be a higher level of service, which is not a bad idea. So I would make a motion that we approve a transit Wednesday. I want to keep saying Tuesday. Thank you for stroking it out. And the free transit would be for the day. I think that would be good promotion for the transit system, because if anything we can do to increase the number of riders, and since spring has finally sprung, and we don't have to deal with Willie anymore, I think this would be a good idea to get them thinking about transit during the summertime. That's my motion.
Ms. Corsi?
Well, I always like to wade into the controversial topics, but I know Francesca is really, really good at finding sponsors for things. So perhaps Francesca, rather than the city having to find $1,000, could find a sponsor for the free buses.
What's the budget for that? Like, how much? About $1,000, okay.
Councillor Gregg?
Just have a question. I had somewhat assumed that there had been something in place last year when the Tuesday was stroked out. And that's not the case?
We did a general Transit Tuesday just to celebrate transit in general during the changes and the discussion and the community engagement on the transit issue. It was not related specifically to the Seniors' Day. Part of our conversation around the transit issues was, looking at maybe having one day a month that was free transit to move everybody around the city, especially on the days when CPP and OAS goes into the bank, that we can move people around to do their shopping and focus that way. But we're not there yet. I'm only giving Ruth a heart attack one day at a time.
Other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Your Worship, could I amend that motion?
Yes, if you wish.
And the reason why to do that is perhaps we could get a report back on if Francesca's able to find any sponsors, and maybe it could even be 50-50, whatever, so that if sponsorship is found, that we have a free transit day on that Wednesday, June 5th.
Okay, I think, I don't know about anyone else, I was a little more confused, but I think what your motion is that you want a report back to determine if there's sponsorship available before we decide,
Make the final decision.
before we make the final decision.
Yeah.
I think that's good, because I don't have a clue what budget we would take this out of.
We have a motion and advertising budget, which was not used last year.
Given that new motion, any other comments? And I'll go, Councillor Dodd, go ahead.
So, sorry, Francesca, you were asking two requests from council today, right? The declaration that June 3rd be recognized as Seniors' Day in Owen Sound. Is there a policy right now in play that limits us from doing something like that?
Through your worship, council does have a policy on this. In 1998, the city repealed the former policy, said that policy be rescinded, and that all future requests for proclamations be refused.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so presently we have Councillor Lemon's motion on the table. All in favor? One. Sorry, so it's the Councillor Lemon's motion is that we get a report back from staff to see if there's sponsorship available for the busing that day, and if there is, we'll make the decision at the time what we do with it. Okay, so all in favor? It looks to be carried. It's unanimous. There we go. Great, thank you.
Your Worship, I hate to be proclamation or something was put in the newspaper, and that's what we're trying to get away from the cost. However, a declaration Doesn't cost us anything.
Well, that's maybe something we can look at down the road.
Refer it to the bylaws.
Yeah, I think so, like,
There's actually a policy coming forward for council's review through the bylaw committee.
Okay, so bylaw committee is bringing us a review of that exact issue. Good, there we go.
it'll be on the table.
The next bylaw meeting, sorry, through your worship, the next bylaw committee meeting is April 1st.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that could be sponsored.
Okay, thank you. So we can go to 9D, which is James Stronach. Skoniak, sorry. Vice President. Yeah, Vice President Corporate Affairs, Bruce Power, giving us an annual update. Thank you. I think we had somebody different at the county a couple weeks ago, maybe Mr. Peavers.
You may have Mr. Peavers. Yep,
Yeah,
that's right.
great. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. This is a practice we've been carrying out on an annual basis since 2011, I believe, and really the purpose is to provide City Council an annual update on the activities up at the Bruce site and also provide members of council the opportunity to ask us any questions, raise any items that they would like to further information on. So I do appreciate the opportunity, especially on a very full agenda like this evening. So by way of an update, as we look back at the year 2014, fairly consistent with what I reported to City Council in when I was here last year, looking back at the previous year of 2013. Nuclear power in 2014 produced about 60% of Ontario's electricity. Actually, it was 62%. The Bruce site was 30%, over 30% of the overall supply in the province. And of course, a really important issue for families and businesses in Owen Sound and across Ontario is the cost of electricity in Ontario, and the price of power at which Bruce Power sold our output for was actually 30% below the average cost of electricity. So if you looked at the average electricity rate that somebody in Ontario would pay on their bill, it'd be about 9 cents a kilowatt hour. Nuclear was sold onto the market at about 6 cents a kilowatt hour last year. So we're continuing to be a very low cost, stable source of supply in Ontario. And you know, if we want to keep our bills low and stable over the long run, that high percentage of nuclear power is really important to achieving that. 2014 was also a year where we had a site output record of all 8 units operating on the site. I'll talk a little bit in a minute about our continued safety performance. One of the items that you may have seen in the media is we're currently going through a 5-year license renewal process with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. So every 5 years we're required to go to our independent federal regulator for a license to operate our facility. I'll talk a little bit about that process. You may have also seen in December we announced that the Government of Canada had selected Bruce Power to participate in a very prestigious review by the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is what they call an OSART review. It stands for Operational Safety and Review Team Meeting. And essentially what happens is countries throughout the world who are members of the international agency will put plants forward for an independent international team to come and do an assessment. And the purpose of these reviews is to always find areas for improvement, but also to identify best practices. So to find things that are taking place on the site that would be beneficial to other operators across the world. So we were very honored to be selected for this and to represent Canada, and that was announced in December. And the mission itself will be taking place at the end of this year. And then, of course, I also want to provide a bit of an update on a few of the real commercial developments throughout 2014 at Bruce Power. You know, I mentioned that we provided about just over 30% of the province's electricity in 2014, but I think one of the real important messages that, and I think I delivered a similar update last year, is there's a lot of focus in Ontario right now on the climate change agenda and the role of Ontario. Actually, when you look around the world in terms of how we phased out the use of coal power in Ontario, and this is just these are 2 very helpful illustrations. If you look at the phase out of coal in Ontario, which is actually the largest climate change initiative in North America. You can see along the top blue line the increase in output from our Bruce Power units since 2002, and on the bottom line you can see the decline of coal. And as Ontario's talking about climate change and securing a clean supply mix over the long run, it's really important for Bruce Power that we get the message out that actually 70% of the energy needed to phase coal in Ontario out came from the Bruce Power site in Tiverton, Ontario. That's something we should be very proud of in this region, being able to take such a significant volume of emissions out of Ontario's supply mix right from Bruce Power. One of the things that I mentioned before that with respect to our license renewal process, which we're undertaking this year, and we'll be holding public hearings in April, hosted by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, is obviously looking at the safety and the operational performance of the units. And you know, this is really a 2x2 matrix here that looks at the cost of your operation and the capacity of your operation. And one of the big myths, and in fact this was something that came up a lot when Bruce Power acquired the site in 2001 as a private operator, was there was a lot of commentary at the time about would the introduction of a private, Canada's first ever private sector nuclear operator, would that impact safety? Would that impact reliability of the units? And the interesting thing is you could put pretty much any one of the world's 400 nuclear reactors on this 2x2 metrics. And what this 2x2 metrics really shows is the safest plants are also the most cost-effective plants in the world. The plants, if you go anywhere in the United States that have the lowest operating costs, are also the plants that operate the safest. And you can see the evolution of the Bruce site since 2001. We went from a higher cost operation in 2001 with only 4 units operating, with a low capacity factor, to where we are today with a very high reliability from our units and a lower cost. And you can basically, you can see the items from 2001 to 2014 that drove that. So that's been a long journey, and it's a journey that we're continuing along. One of the things that we're very proud of at Bruce Power, and safety first is our #1 value as a company, is our industrial safety record. You can see since 2001 and in 2014 in particular, an industrial safety accident rate is 0.05. And this graph, I think, does a good job of illustrating just how our industrial safety stacks up against other sectors. So you can see, you know, Bruce Power really down in the bottom quadrant. You know, we literally go millions and millions of hours without a single lost time injury. In fact, our Bruce A facility operated 11 years straight without one single lost time injury. And you compare that to the Ontario forestry sector, mining sector, oil and gas and electricity sector. It's a fairly phenomenal industrial safety record, and it's a real focus, continued focus for the site, and of course it'll be very relevant to our license renewal process coming up. Obviously, as a nuclear power generation, one of the things people ask us often about is radiation safety. It's a key pillar in our safe nuclear operations. And we've done a lot of work over the last several years of educating the public about the emissions from the Bruce site when it comes to radiological. Because radiation is one of those things that you know, people aren't very familiar with. A lot of myths, a lot of concern about it. So we've tried to really put things in perspective. So you'll see a lot of information on our website about, you know, just kind of comparing the levels of radiation that people get every single day and how minuscule the emissions are from a nuclear site. And this graphic does a really good job of explaining that, and just indicates that, you know, we're operating at a fraction of the regulatory, the safe allowable limit that's set for us by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission of 0.1%. And this, of course, will be a significant item in our license renewal hearing. Something we monitor regularly, we report on it very transparently, and I think it's something important for us to share with councils on an annual basis. Environmental safety is also a significant area. One of the big highlights for us in 2014 was we co-authored a study with the Asthma Society of Canada that looked at Bruce Power's role in coal phase-out, and I'd be happy to share a copy of that report with council. But really what it did was it reinforced just the importance of the amount of clean output that we put on the grid, and literally the hundreds of millions of dollars in savings to the healthcare system as a result of more Bruce Power output and less coal output in Ontario. A lot of the times when people are looking at the cost of electricity, they're not factoring in the full life cycle costs related to generating that electricity. And of course, as a nuclear operator, we do factor in the full life cycle costs of our electricity. We fully fund waste, we fully fund the decommissioning of our facility, and in the price of power we're paid, that is 100% accommodated for. So what we did with the Asthma Society was looked at, you know, by replacing coal, what kind of impact has that had on human health and our healthcare system? And it was a very compelling study. I mentioned the predictable, reliable operations. Actually, in 2014, it was a record output year for the site. The last time the site had produced that volume of electricity was in 1991. And of course, that's really a testament to the fact that we have 8 units operating, and we basically see ourselves in a situation we'll be producing at this level for many, many years to come. One of the things we often get asked about is how does our workforce break down? And one of the things I don't have on this slide is the geographic breakdown. So we would estimate we have, in terms of base employees, about probably 300 employees from the Owen Sound area. We obviously have a lot of peaking resource, whether they're building trades, other temporary staff that also come from this area. But what this slide really looks at is how we've changed the demographics on our site. If you look at when the company inherited the site in 2001, you see a demographic on the site that is skewed towards individuals closer to retirement. And then in being a business that went from an end of life of 2018 when we took over the site to now we're talking 2050, 2060 with refurbishment. It's very important we're managing the demographics on site, and you can see the demographic shift that has taken place. And that's really been driven by very heavy recruitment from the local region, including the Owen Sound area. One of the things I'm sure that you see fairly frequently from us is we try to be as open and transparent as possible. We like to provide multiple opportunities for people to get information about nuclear power and what we do. And of course, there's a range of tools available for people to do that. As I shared with council just a couple of years ago, we've had an ongoing advertising campaign throughout the province of Ontario. And one of the things we're seeing is a steady increase in the support for nuclear refurbishment among the public. And actually, we hit an all-time high of public support in December, polled by Ipsos Reid, of 80%. It's the highest level of support that nuclear has ever been measured in Ontario. And I think a lot of that is the effort of the industry of getting the facts and getting the information out to people. You know, there's many myths about nuclear power, but there's almost this view that somehow nuclear power is a controversial issue in Ontario. And I mean, you're all elected officials around the table. 80% is a number that you would probably go to the ballot box most days of the week with. So we're very proud of that support, and we look forward to doing our best to build on that. One of the things as we talk about the region around our site, and this is relevant to our CNSC hearings underway, we consider the immediate impact area of the Bruce site really Huron, Bruce, and Grey counties. It covers about 150,000 residents, and that's where we really focus our sort of host region communications on. And as members of council are aware, that tends to also be the area where we focus a lot of our investments in community infrastructure, medical infrastructure. We're in a multi-year commitment with Grey Bruce Health Services around their hospital campaign. Our CEO has agreed to take on the chair role for that campaign. And of course, really focusing our investments in that 3-county area, which includes the city of Owen Sound. And of course, I won't spend a lot of time talking about this. I'd be pleased to share the results with members of the council, but we also do conduct annual public opinion polling. We retain Ipsos Reid to carry that out in that area. And again, to really understand what are the key concerns of local residents, and how is our reputation viewed in the area. And that's certainly something you can never take for granted. It takes an ongoing focus, but we're really proud of frankly the community support and engagement with respect to Bruce Power and nuclear generally. I have a video here, but I understand that you know, having had the opportunity to listen to many of the interesting delegations, that you probably have a lot of items on your plate for tonight, so I will skip over this, but really I'll just give you the 30-second view of what I was going to show you. We announced a very exciting extension to an agreement with a firm called Nordion out of Ottawa in November. And one of the things that people in Ontario don't realize, and actually don't even think many people in our own backyard realize this, is Bruce Power is actually one of the world's largest suppliers of what we call cobalt-60. And what happens is we take cobalt-60 from our Bruce B units when we take them out in outage. We ship this cobalt-60 to a place called Nordion in Ottawa, and they use this cobalt-60 to sterilize medical instruments all over the world. So Bruce Power is a contributor to medical instrument sterilization across the world. 40% of the world's medical instruments, and in this video, if we were able to take some time, you'd actually see an anesthesiologist who was going through all of the different materials he uses every day, whether it's a catheter, whether it's a syringe, and explaining how all of those were sterilized using Nordion and Bruce Power Cobalt 60. So we've launched a new ad campaign called Clean Nuclear Power Safe Hospitals. Because, you know, this is another interesting angle of our nuclear industry, that without our nuclear fleet, Canada wouldn't be a leader in this area. And I think it's in a very important area. And in the annual review that I distributed earlier on to the clerk, you'll see some information on that. But this is a very interesting angle, and I think it's a message that we think is very important to get out to the general public. So with a look ahead to 2015, you know, we expect this year to be supplying about 30% of Ontario's electricity. Again, we have about a similar output profile to what we had last year. We expect nuclear to continue to be around 60% overall. Just to give you an idea, today, with all the units operating on the Bruce site, with what demand was at today, we're actually producing 40% of Ontario's electricity today, but we expect overall to be about 30%. And again, a very stable kind of price line for nuclear power. We have a number of planned maintenance outages on our units. We completed the Unit 1 outage. And basically what an outage is our units run at a very high level of power for a long, reliable period of time. And what a maintenance outage is a planned inspection of the unit. So it's no different than if you're flying an airplane regularly. You know, after a certain number of flying hours, Air Canada or whatever your airline is will take the airplane out to do inspections and maintenance and maintain the material, the condition of the plant. And that's all that an outage is. Of course, it's a bit more sophisticated than that, but in simple terms, you're checking the equipment for the next operating cycle. As I mentioned, we have license renewal hearings coming up. The Part 2 hearings, which is open to the public, and we encourage anybody to participate in those hearings, are being held actually in the region here in Kincardine, and those are scheduled for April. I mentioned already the international review that the Government of Canada has nominated us for, and that's in November, December. And also, of course, Ontario, right up till March 31st, people have the opportunity to submit ideas that may impact and support Ontario's climate change goals, and we'll participate actively in that process because, of course, you know, to the extent that Bruce Power's phased out 70% of coal in Ontario, if you want to maintain the progress we've made on that, we need to make sure our nuclear units continue to be there and that we're continuing to invest in those units to keep moving forward on the climate change side. And then, you know, most important, I think, for the region is our long-term investment program, which we're in negotiations right now with the province of Ontario over, around a plan to refurbish the remaining 6 units on the site. So that's all for me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I mentioned just a few seconds ago that I distributed a copy of our annual review, which gives you some more information on some of these things, and also a document called Delivering Safe, Reliable Operations. And this is really related to our license renewal, and this is the first time we've developed a document like this, but one of the things about our regulatory regime is everything is 100% transparent. You can go on the internet and get just about any document related to our operation as it relates to the CNSC. But what we found is most members of the public don't want to get a 500-page technical report on every element of our operation. So this was really designed to give a high-level overview of the license application overall, and that to the extent people were interested in more information on any given element, it gave them the avenues in which they could get that additional information. So I encourage you to review the document, and if you have any other questions, please let me know.
Councillor Lemon, go ahead.
Now, I'm just wondering, is there any work going ahead on other isotopes at the Bruce plant that you might be able to produce, other than the one you are doing?
That's a good question because, as you're aware, there's an impending shortage of what they call Moly-99 when the Chalk River facility reaches its end of life in several years. Right now, from our perspective, we're fairly focused on the Cobalt 60 component. Of course, our reactors were designed to be power operating reactors, so they weren't. Isotope production is a byproduct, not a purpose. But I do think it's one of those areas. I mean, one of the things in modern medicine, it's an excellent question, is that there's a very high demand for very rare isotopes as medical advancements are taking place. So there's a very active dialogue between the nuclear industry and organizations like Nordion about items that we would in the past view as waste products that are actually now potentially very valuable medical isotopes. The biggest issue around medical isotope production is the, and you'll see this in the document, is the chain to get to a medical use. So obviously with cobalt-60, you remove the cobalt-60 from the reactor during a planned outage. And of course, there's a whole chain of events that have to take place for that to actually become a sterilization. But it's something we're open to, but right now it's pretty much cobalt-60.
Great. Other questions? Anyone? Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you. What was the turnout on your last town hall telephone meeting?
That's a great question. So I think we hit about, I'll have to double check the number, I think it was about 15,000 people. So our CEO every year has a CEO telephone town hall, and we do calls out to all residences and households in Grey Bruce and Huron counties, and we have about 15,000 people this year.
So
it was certainly it was somewhere around that number. It was a very amazing turnout.
It is. Now, so the questions that are asked, do you know ahead of time what these questions are?
No, basically the setup, it's a good question. Basically the setup is like a radio talk show. So what happens is people are connected to the telephone line, and any member who's on the telephone is able to hit a number on their keypad.
Oh, that's what it is.
And they go to an operator who puts them in a queue. And effectively our CEO, and for those of you that know him, he just loves it, ask me anything kind of approach. Yeah. And he gets through over the course of the hour and 15 minutes as many questions as he can. And to the extent there are people who didn't get a question asked, what we do is the operator records those and provides people the opportunity for us to provide a written submission.
Okay.
It was only supposed to be an hour town hall, and we extended it another 15 minutes.
Well, they're very interesting. If anybody hasn't listened in on them, they are very interesting.
And the one thing I would say, just since you brought it up, is we first looked at this technology 2.5 years ago. The thing that is amazing, it's very inexpensive to use, and you can really engage a lot of people. It's a relatively inexpensive tool to get 15,000 people. You can target it to an area, a city. It's a phenomenal engagement tool, so I'd highly recommend it.
It's great. Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks for your time.
You packed a lot of information into that. We'll see you next year. Thanks. Thanks to everybody that came and presented tonight. So next is number 10 on our list is public question period. Anyone wish to ask council a question? Not seeing anyone. Next is 11 correspondence received, which council is required, direction is required. I believe it's from the Farm Safety Association, request for donation. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mayor Boddy. I'd request that we politely decline the request for a donation for the Grey County Farm Safety Association.
Deputy Mayor Wright.
Yeah, we are already contributing through the county. The county contributes $25,000 a year towards this association for rental purposes, and so I feel that we are already giving.
Good. Thank you. Other comments? All in favor of the motion? Thank you. Carried. 12A is a report from the Deputy Clerk with regard to public appointment of the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Board of Management, housekeeping amendments to the 2015 board and committee bylaw. Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Board has recommended to Council that Neil Devlin be appointed to the board. Should Council approve this, an amendment to the 2015 board and committee bylaw is required to increase by one the members selected by the board and approved by Council, as well as appoint Mr. Devlin to the board. In order to clarify quorum and voting for cross appointments, a housekeeping amendment is required to the 2015 board and committee bylaw. The staff recommendation in this report is to approve these amendments to the board and committee bylaw.
Good. Thank you. Council, response? Councillor Dodd?
I would like to move the recommendation as stated here in the report.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 12.2A is, I believe, Mr. Becking, Director of Operations, with regard to rehabilitation of City Hall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll give Council a brief overview of the report. City Hall was built in 1965. That makes it 50 years old this year. It was built according to the standards of the day. and those are very different from the standards that are in force in the current time. Attention paid to things like energy use and insulation and whatnot was fundamentally different in those days when energy was cheap, and we all know that it's anything but today. They also weren't too overly concerned with things like moisture and whatnot, and if anyone's taken a little bit of a walk downstairs in the lower level, you'll notice that we've sprung several leaks down there. So we're facing a challenge that the building is effectively at the end of its useful life in terms of what it was designed for, and it's appropriate now that council consider the alternatives to give it potentially a new lease on life or consider other alternatives. The building has been reviewed in the recent past, and I must apologize to council because I gave, somehow I gave the clerk a previous version of the report, so when you read it, it may have been somewhat confusing for you. But the building was reviewed in 2012. Out of that study came a number of observations, including the fact that the roof was in desperate need of replacement, as well as the need for repairs and replacement to many of the main components, building components, including things like windows, doors, mechanical, electrical systems, and so forth. A more in-depth, since that time, the roof has been replaced, and while the roof itself was found to be more recently in very good condition, we still have a lot of problems with ponding of water on the roof of the building, and that's manifesting itself in some of the leaks that we're experiencing throughout the structure. The most recent review was done by EXP, and they found quite a number of issues. Again, they found the ponding of the water on the roof. The exterior envelope of the building is deteriorating rapidly and will continue to do so as long as it's not addressed. The windows and doors are not thermally separated from the building, so that's a kind of a fancy way of saying it leaks like a sieve. They're single pane windows. Normal standard is double thermopane as an absolute minimum, and there are in some installations justification now going to triple thermopane or some form of hybrid double thermopane glass. The mechanical systems in the building, the boiler, the plumbing systems have reached the end of their life and need to be replaced. The electrical system was actually found to be in rather good condition. That having been said, if you start going in and replacing mechanical systems, you're going to have to replace the electrical system that is associated with that mechanical system. So at the end of the day, you're still having to replace it. We don't have a good security system. The fire safety systems apparently are up to standard, but need to be brought up to a more modern state. The elevator apparently is in fairly good condition, but it will also need some work in the not too distant future. The long and the short of the review was that over the next 3 to 5 years, council should consider repairs and major maintenance to the various systems within the building to the tune of about $2 million. And I would hasten to point out that that will not address some of the systemic issues, like the fact that there's no insulation in the walls, and so on and so forth. So there's some fairly significant work that even though you're spending a lot of money, you're not going to address, and it will simply perpetuate. I think the other thing to keep in mind here is that all you're doing really for $2 million is buying yourself another 10 years, 15 at the outside. So The range of alternatives at this point, council can go in and replace the individual systems. And you're looking at, as I've indicated, something in the order of $2 million just for the hard construction. By the time you throw in the administrative and engineering costs in on top of that, you're probably closer to $2.5 million. And you're going to get 10 to 15 years out of that. Second alternative would be a staged renovation of the existing structure. Conceptually, and very conceptually, that is expected to cost somewhere in the order of $6.7 to $7 million to complete, and another about $1.7 million for design and administration fees. So a total cost of about $8.5 million for that project. That'll give you a life of 30 plus years. The third alternative that council may wish to consider is essentially starting from zero. So, in other words, demolish this building and construct a new one. Obviously, the city organization would have to continue on providing services to the public through another location while the building would be reconstructed in a new design. If you start from fresh, you then have the ability to consider a variety of options, including some form of commercial or institutional space in combination with the city. There may be also a commercial model that would involve also some residential space. That becomes an alternative, an option that could provide some long-term revenues to support the building. And you can also look at combining operations. And I wouldn't want to speculate what might be combined, but just to say that those options might exist where presently you're thinking of other things, other alternatives which this might not fit into. That kind of an option, depending on how big you go, certainly by providing something in the order of 25% bigger than what we have now, would be around $12 million. And that would start that life cycle all over again, and that it would give you another 50 years. I know I'm throwing an awful lot at you in one report, and to be quite honest with you, I would humbly suggest that you need to take the numbers that I've given you with almost a whole salt mine, because they are so conceptual and they're based on so many assumptions that I don't know that you can necessarily make any hard and fast decisions. But I think one of the things council does need to do is to start considering your options. And to that end, I would suggest that council may wish to consider appointing a ad hoc committee to consider the options and how we might choose to move forward. In terms of next steps, after an ad hoc committee is appointed, I would suggest that we would then look at the three alternatives in greater detail. I can certainly assist the ad hoc committee and provide technical support for it, but what you really need is an architect. Frankly, it's not my forte. I can boss the job, I can deliver it from a construction management point of view, but you need somebody who has more artistic ability than I do. So you're probably looking at a $25,000 or $50,000 appointment to assist you in scoping down the range of alternatives and to deciding next steps beyond, and then of course whatever alternative council chooses to adopt, then you would head down the conventional construction design and construction route to deliver the project. So with that, your worship, I'm sure council has a number of questions, and I'll try to answer them.
Mr. Becking, I think not only did you present a lot of numbers, unfortunately, you present a lot of numbers in an atmosphere that shows that we've got a 50-year-old ventilation system, and it's extremely hot in here, and I'm not sure that everybody stayed awake through all of that. I'm seeing some, it's very warm in here. Questions? Councillor O'Leary.
I noticed you didn't mention option number 4, doing absolutely nothing for now.
That is certainly an option, Your Worship.
What is our cost? Like, is our cost going up each year in terms of keeping the place up?
Yes.
So give me some numbers. What are the differences, say, in the last 4 years?
I can't give you that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that you are going to face having to replace all of the mechanical systems. When it dies, it will die, and you will have to replace it. And so that limits your options for the future.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Lemon?
Well, I think we've all known that this building is, this building has some problems and some issues. But there are things that can be done without using an engineer or an architect. As an example, we could go to windows that are double pane or triple, whatever. And window companies, in my experience, will come in and they will bid jobs and give you all the things that they will do. Now, that's not a perfect solution, but that would save some of our heating costs, which I know are inordinately high. No, that doesn't put insulation in the walls, but there are techniques where you can blow it in. I don't know what the construction is in this building at the time, whether or not there's a hollow space that you could blow insulation in. Those are some things we should have, and we should also be looking at the reports which weren't included. I think there have been 2 studies on this building, if memory serves me correct.
That's correct.
And my feeling is that for us to make a decision tonight without looking at those previous studies would be very foolish. I mean, we invested money in those studies. I think that should be put on our City Hall website or sent to all the councilors so we can make a better and informed decision. And find out all the problems we've got, because we did pay for these 2 consultant studies, and they're somewhere on somebody's shelf, and very little action's been taken. Plus, you didn't mention the fact that we have asbestos in this building in other areas. And the other thing which wasn't mentioned in that is this building does not meet Ontario with Disability Act requirements.
Councillor Lemon, I'll get you to, thanks, but I'll get you to focus on the recommendation there, because I think we're going through the discussion of everything that's wrong with the building, and we know it, but the recommendation is that we strike a committee to review that.
I would
And that's what you're talking
make a
about, I
motion
think.
to table that until such time as council has had time to review the previous studies on the building.
Councillor O'Leary?
I'll support that motion. This might be a stupid question, but I have to ask. I don't understand how we have a city hall full of engineers, including a building inspector, and we have to spend $20,000 for someone to tell us what has to be done in the building.
Councillor Gregg?
I would also support that motion, and I would note that it is a sensitive topic, and being that there is a half of us are new on council, I mentioned during the operations committee that because of the nature of this material, that these consultants' reports be included and be presented to the council entirely. And they are missing from the 7-page report here tonight, nor are they in the 89-page operations committee minutes that are later on to be seen. It was a 263-page agenda for that meeting, and I'm disappointed to not see those consultants' reports in the staff report presented here tonight.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. As Councillor Gregg mentioned, this was discussed at great length at the operations meeting, hence this report. It was felt by the committee that this was an issue that needed to sort of come to council. It wasn't really a committee, operations committee, sort of beyond their scope. and I will support the motion as well, and I'm just wondering if when this, just bring this report back with those the reports that Councillor Gregg mentioned attached, and that will help educate people as they wrestle with this decision. Two questions, if I might, for Mr. Becking, though. In your report, it talks about ponding on the roof and maintenance. That's one, and the other one, it talks about there's some holes in the fire separations, and I'm just wondering, both of those issues don't require committee to meet or council to discuss. Both of them are sort of, well, one I would suggest is a life safety issue and one's a maintenance issue. Are those being addressed, or can they be addressed in the immediate future? Either or both?
With suitable budget allocations, yes. One obviously is a maintenance issue and is a relatively inconsequential from a budgetary perspective. As to the other, that's not something, as you're aware, that you just slap a piece of 2x4 or something across the opening. It has to be done with some care and attention to detail. Your Worship, with respect to one of the other questions about the fact that we have all kinds of qualified staff around City Hall, we don't have staff with the qualifications to do this kind of work. So it's not for lack of desire, it's because we just don't have the resources.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon, could you, sorry,
if I could just, could we ask, if it's a friendly amendment to the motion, that if we could find out specifically if there's a problem with the firewall between our mechanical and electric room, I would suggest that's something we want to address in the immediate future. So if there's a cost implication, could we, when this comes back at the next meeting, perhaps get that? Just even a
I would consider that a friendly amendment, because that's something that should be done immediately.
Councillor Lemon, Madam Clerk has asked if you could clarify your original motion and with that amendment maybe really restate it.
My motion is to table pending council receiving copies of previous studies on City Hall, and staff at the same time bring back a report on the fire separation between the electrical and mechanical rooms and how that could be remedied, as well as the ponding on the roof. And that report come back, we should be able to have it in 2 weeks, I imagine. Should we not, or do you want to wait 4 weeks, or till council meeting after that? I yield to the city manager on the length of time.
We'll get them to you as quickly as we can. It may not all be in 2 weeks, but we'll get there as quickly as we can.
Okay, well then I'll say till the council meeting after the next, to give you 4 weeks.
Why don't you just leave it open, because we
I'll
have
leave it- okay, I'll leave it
frozen
open.
pipes right now that department's dealing with, et cetera, so.
Yeah, there are a few of those around. Thank you.
Okay, is that, okay. Councillor Thomas, no, you got covered. Okay, all in favor of that motion? That is carried. Thank you. Report 12A3, which I think is Mr. Becking again, proposed water wastewater financial plan for 2015 to 2020.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council received a presentation this afternoon from Mr. Scanlon of Watson Associates with respect to the proposed water rates for the coming 6 years. As Mr. Scanlon explained, having a financial plan in place is a requirement of our drinking water license for the city's water system. Mr. Scanlon and his staff have carried out I think a very comprehensive analysis of where we are today and where we need to be in a few years' time. As the report indicates, I've given the rates for both the fixed portion and the variable portion for both water and wastewater. The average rate increase for water will be approximately 2.5% per year. And as Mr. Scanlon indicated, council only needs to adopt the rates for the coming year. Council has the option to review the rates on a year-by-year basis thereafter, and you may wish to do so. The other point that I would like to make, and it didn't come up this afternoon, and it's not contained within my report, but as I'll be informing you shortly, we are absorbing some fairly significant costs on our water system. The proposed rate structure is based on a 2.5% increase for water and a 3.5% increase for wastewater. And council may wish to escalate the water rate by something more than 2.5% in an effort to try and compensate for some of the additional costs that we have experienced thus far. So one suggestion that was put forward was to make both the water and the wastewater rate a 3.5% increase. That's at council's discretion. I think that gives the council a bit of a summary, Your Worship. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, now questions first. Any questions? Councillor Dodd?
I think we're all well aware that there's been obviously some very tragic things going on with our water lines. But just to make a proposal that we increase the rates by 1.5% without actually finding out the finalized numbers, I wouldn't be in support of doing that. I think at the end of the time of when everything's been resolved, I think that'd be a good opportunity to do that. Can we look at that afterwards? Can we review that, or is this when we table this? It'd be next year that we would have to do it? Okay. I just don't think it's fair to increase them at 1.5% if we don't even know what the total number is.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Well, the recommendation as it states is that that we pass the bylaw to enact the financial plan for the 2015 to 2020 period. That would mean that it would be at the rate that the plan was passed today. Mm-hmm. So if we want to just do it for 1 year, then we're going to have to change the recommendation here. I liked the plan that came in. I thought it was great, and we've been so used to 10% increases in our water rate that this is a bit of a good news that the increase is 3%, and I certainly don't object to a 3% increase on having clean water come out of my tap every day. So I'm moving the recommendation as it is.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. And just to clarify, this is approving the plan. The actual rate would be decided each year at budget. Yes. No. We're required to have a plan.
Yes, we're required to have a plan, and the plan as presented in my report is what will be the basis for the formulation of the actual plan that gets submitted to the ministry. But council can choose to, instead of approving all of the rates for the 5-year period, you have the ability to approve them on an annual basis, and then it would simply come back to you as part of the annual budgetary process.
And I understand, Mr. Ritchie, that's what we've done in the past, correct? Year by year?
That's correct, Your Worship. We would, this is a bit of a living document, I guess would be the way people would put it today. As circumstances change, Mr. Scanlon, based on the information that staff had given him, we try to project our best forecast of what's going to happen the next number of years. As those change, and certainly Mr. Becking has mentioned, weather seems to be constant changing, we may adjust that. So, but the plan as we see it to be sustainable would be, as Mr. Scanlon has said, we would review it every year and see exactly what our budget said we needed in that particular year, but this certainly looks sustainable.
And this is the plan that we would submit to the provincial government and have to do so by April?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Lemon?
In respect to the water line freezing, breaking, and whatever, how much do we have currently in water reserves? I believe it's a couple $1 million, is it not?
Not in water reserves, Your Worship. That's in wastewater reserves. Again, we've done that to have some funding for the plant, so we won't debenture the full amount. Top of my head, and I should never go off the top of my head, I think we have perhaps $1 million in water reserves, but I can certainly check that information and report to council perhaps in the coming
well, to me, that's one of the reasons you have reserves is for contingency such as we experienced this year. And before we start increasing the water rates more, we need to know, I agree, we have to know the total cost.
Okay, so your motion is to approve the plan as recommended. Okay, so the motion is to approve, the recommendation is moved the way it states, which is the plan, including the recommended rate increase, the passed bylaw to enact a financial plan for 2015 to 2020. So everyone understands the motion?
No, if I could get a little bit more clarity on it, just, yeah, I thought it was crystal clear this afternoon on the increase in the plan. And now, Mr. Becking, I just wonder if you can clarify that new 3%, like what's that over and above we're referring to that's different than what Gary presented today?
Well, the current recommendation, Your Worship, is for a 2.5%, approximately 2.5% increase in the water rates. What I suggested to council is you may wish to consider something other than that in light of some of the challenges that we've faced over the course of the last month and a half or so. That said, the resolution, as I understand it, that is before you, will approve the recommendation as proposed in the report.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I was just wasn't sure if it was referring back to the table.
That's correct. Okay. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Thank you. The next is 12A4, and I'm giving an oral report of Grey County Council. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Wright usually does this, but she was unable to attend on March 3rd. It's March 3rd county meeting. The committee reports and recommendations in those reports were presented from the corporate services, transportation, public safety, social services, and planning and community development committees. They were adopted. With regard to Owen Sound issues, from the transportation minutes, I confirm the approval of the tender of the county share of restructuring of Gray Road 15, which is 3rd Avenue East. This was approved with the adjustment in the county budget to accommodate the over budget amount of what the tender came in that was over what was originally budgeted. I note from the planning minutes that $1 million was transferred from a one-time reserve to a broadband, basically establishing a broadband infrastructure reserve earmarked for future fiber-based broadband in the county. As everyone knows, we've been trying to get, working with the other counties all the way down through London, Southwest Economic Alliance, and the SWIFT program, trying to work towards getting fiber broadband spread throughout the area, and from our point of view, specifically Grey County. I also note from those minutes that the 911 dispatch service contract was given to Owen Sound Police Services. This is a renewal. There was a slight increase, and I didn't write down the exact increase. The other thing in those minutes was the collection of the county's development charges for the Alpha Street Medical Arts Building here in Owen Sound were waived, as we had done at the city, to be collected, not waived, excuse me, but the collection was deferred to when the occupancy permits are issued. And the other thing that we passed at the county level was the presentation and the passing of the 2015 Grey County budget. We end up with an estimated 2% decrease in the levy, with $463,363 new assessment that came in 2014 being added, a reduction of $2,323,000 approximately in taxation, with a removal of transfer to reserve for future capital. So overall, the increase in the actual spending budget of the county is 3.34%, less the growth, less the stable funding corporate capital, which brings it down to -2. And further, as we looked at here, the town of Blue Mountains had moved that 100% of a reserve that was being held by the county to be able to adjust to the cut in the OMPF, I always get the letters in the wrong order, grant. They continued to build a reserve. The presentation or the proposal from the county was that 50% gets provided to the lower tiers. Blue Mountains moved to have 100% given to the lower tiers. They were defeated on that. They're the only municipality that supported that. So in the end, 50%, as we I think originally budgeted, will be transferred, and our share of that 50% will be based on our percentage of assessment at the county level. Is any questions? Usually move that. Councilor McManaman?
Just one comment, and I would start, it has been said before, I think it's great getting this county report. That's really, it's a big part of our levy, and it's good to get this information. One question, a number of us were at the Transportation Master Plan workshop they had, and the discussion about the moving from county roads to city roads and who's going to assume what and do what. And I'm just wondering, and the issue, and at that time, they're basically taking 2 years to step back and study it further. But they did talk about if there's roads that are mutually agreeable between municipalities and the county to work on those. And I'm just wondering, one of the ones they talked about was I guess you'd say the eastern bypass around Owen Sound, the 28th Avenue East, goes by the hospital, leads into our industrial park on the east side. That road is a boundary road between Owen Sound and Meaford, is in terrible shape. We've discussed it at operations a number of times. Really needs to have something done. The county has suggested that road could perhaps become a county road, and switching, and I think it's Gray Road 11, I might have that wrong, to the east, just switching them basically. And I'm just wondering if that discussion could be, who's the member on TAPS, on transportation?
Well, it's actually not being handled in transportation, it's being handled in planning.
Anyway, since we're discussing the county, could that be brought forward in the near future? Just a discussion around that between us, Meaford, and the county as to how that road, because I'm not sure it's in a state that I'm not sure it's going to last a whole lot longer. Out past 28th and Superior Street. So anyway, just bring that forward to.
Just before Deputy Mayor goes, I'm going to ask Mr. Becking. I think he had his hand up there. Right. He might have some.
Your Worship, I was in attendance at that presentation, and the county has asked for feedback by the 6th of May, I believe. I'll be putting together a report that will be comprehensive and look at all of the recommendations from the city's perspective, and I'll present that back to council through operations. And then I think at that point then council can decide what our response back is, and certainly that particular issue will be part of that discussion.
Okay. Anything you want to add to it?
No. That'd be fine, and if I can get that report, because I sit on the Transportation Master Plan Committee, and then we can go from there. Yeah.
Good, thank you. 12B, consent agenda items. Ms. Bloomfield, do you want to present them?
Thank you, Your Worship. The consent agenda includes a report from the facilities booking coordinator respecting the Sunday Morning Hockey League Players Association Easter Hockey Tournament, several planning notices where no report is triggered, minutes for receipt from the library board, and correspondence received, which is presented for the information of council.
Good. Councillor O'Leary?
Rob White does a good job with this tournament, brings a lot of people to town, and they donate a lot of money. With that, I'll move the recommendation of, or all 4 recommendations.
Good. Other comments, questions? All in favor? That is carried. Minutes of boards and committees approval, 12C, starting with Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee. Who wants to present that? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mayor Body. Of the Planning and Heritage Committee meeting that was held 2 weeks ago. The location known as Branningham Grove was on the agenda. There has been a demolition permit, or the request for a demolition permit on that location, most formerly known as Shipwreck Lee's, but to many, Louis Steakhouse. It's located on Highway 26. It's a standalone facility now, and it has fallen into a substantial state of disrepair. It actually has became quite worrisome to our own property standards, to our bylaw department, and through our property standards, they had actually initiated a request for a building demolition permit as well. However, what is in front of the city now is a permit request from the current property owner. Now, the property is for sale, as are a few of the brick homes out there. And this is a building that's listed on the Heritage Registry for Owen Sound. And because of that, no demolition permit can be issued for 60 days. Committee did feel that in consideration of a timeline on this property dating back to the summer of 2008, inclusive of multiple reports from Heritage consultants and local engineers, that city staff look for ways to preserve some of the architectural elements of the building in future development, working with the developer or property owner. Committee also was concerned with how our own bylaw department could have demolished a listed building within our own Heritage registry. That process would be subject to our own CBO, however, before issuing that permit, as he would have to reference the Ontario Heritage Act as he does before issuing any demolition permit. So as it stands now, that building has a demolition permit request in front of the city. City staff are looking at methods of preserving in some form the nature or some architectural elements. And I'm sure that our director, Pam Coulter, can answer a little better and more fine-tuned than I can on what can be done there. And I do have a couple other mentions, but perhaps if there is any questions to myself or to Pam.
On that issue, questions, Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. And just in the minutes to Ms. Coulter, it describes that 60 days starting March 5th, but then it says the demolition permit is not complete. So I'm just wondering, the owner is going to forward fulfilling the requirements of completing the application. So when does the clock start, is my question.
Through your worship, we have been consulting with the Ontario Heritage Act. So we have two acts at play. One is the Building Code Act, which provides the information that's required in order for an application to be complete. The other is the Ontario Heritage Act. The 60-day timeline provided for a listed building under the Ontario Heritage Act, it is my understanding, starts ticking on March the 5th, the date we received the application. The CBO, however, has not deemed the application complete. There's sign-offs, for example, for utilities that need to accompany the application. So on the building code side, there are timelines that the application's not complete at this time. The 60 days starts ticking. So the resolution of the committee was to bring back a report at your next meeting, that would be early in April, regarding the application that has been received by the property owner, and that we meet with the owner around options for preservation and interpretation. A meeting has been set up with a representative for the owner to have that discussion.
Okay. Questions? If you want to continue, Councillor Gregg, with your report.
We also had an additional item added was the February building stats, which did note that year over year, 2015 is down 25% in the permits issued this year and down almost 60% in a dollar value. That's February over February. And on an annual year to date, we have not yet issued one building permit for a new house We're down 33%, having issued only 10 permits, down from 20 last year, and $893,000 less in overall dollar value for year to date for buildings. So.
Okay, anything else? So you're moving adoption of the report?
Yes, I'm
Or approval of the
moving for
report?
approval of the minutes of the community planning.
Any other questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Well done. 12C2, minutes of the Cultural Advisory Committee. Councillor Thomas?
Yes, through you, your worship, these are the minutes of the February 11th meeting, which was really an orientation meeting for the new members of the board. We did have a deputation from Rob Cotton representing the Grey Bruce Image Archives. Many people will know the archives, maybe without knowing they know them, but they are the owners of the J. James collection of photographs. And Rob talked a little bit about their conservation efforts in terms of preserving as much local history, photographic history as they can. And they have expanded their collection now. It's not here, but I think he said that 35 different photo collections now. So one of those is the J. James collection, and they've got quite a fantastic website if anyone's interested in looking historic Owen Sound photos. GBIA is their short form, and it's the website is actually greybruceimagearchives.com. Really well worth having a look through because there's some fantastic stuff in there. Most of the rest of the meeting was orientation and all the various different things the committee does. This was held prior to the cultural mixer, so we had a report on the upcoming cultural mixer, which has since happened, and I understand it was a great success. So we're still waiting to have a report on that at the committee. And with that, I would move acceptance of the report.
Any questions for Councillor Thomas? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Minutes of the Financial Advisory Committee. Are you going to do those?
You're the chair. Oh, you weren't there.
I went there. I was...
Yes, through you, your worship. Of note, at the Financial Advisory Committee, we did elect yourself, your worship, as chair in absentia. Congratulations. And we went through a number of reports, including the classifications of the grain elevators. Let me see what else I have to look through. I thought you would do this, but of course you weren't there. Growth reports. The committee was polled to see whether they had any items that they preferred to see come forward. And of course, it being, again, the first meeting of the new committee, some of us are very new to this committee. There wasn't a heck of a lot that came up. Am I missing anything, Mr. Ritchie?
You've done an excellent job.
Okay, and with that, I'll move the acceptance of those minutes.
And don't ask him any questions, obviously. Sorry about that. Yeah, I hadn't thought that through. Would have warned you. All in favor? That's carried. 12C4, minutes of the Operations Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Worship. Quite a few items on the agenda tonight. I was going to mention we nominated Councillor Lemon at the committee to be on the Accessibility Committee, and we didn't actually have his, we didn't know whether he was going to accept it or not, so I wanted to ask him that tonight, but
we can't know if he's
well,
gone.
I guess if we pass it when he's not here, then he's on the committee. A couple of the items we are moving forward on the Kenny Drain, some of the design components there. That's an important drainage course up to our east side. The discussion we've had before about source water protection, we had that, I think that was last meeting, we discussed that and our concerns with that. We appointed Mr. Prentice as our drinking water quality management standard representative. There was a discussion about transit fees, and there is one correction. It said moved by Councillor Thomas, who is not on the committee. It was Councillor Gregg that moved it, item C. And that is, last year with all the discussions going around about transit, the city missed a fare increase. There was to be a fare increase last summer, and we did not do it. So the committee, that was caught by staff, brought forward a recommendation. The committee's recommending that there be an immediate fare increase April 1st and a following one January 1st of 2016. Both would be on the standard fare a quarter, 25 cents each time. For a pass, it's a $5 increase. Again, these were, when we did the transit study 3 years ago, we found that our fares were 30% below the provincial average. So we brought in a program to increase them by 10% per year to get us up to the provincial average. And as I said, in 2014 that was missed, so this is a bit of catch-up. So if these minutes pass, there would be an increase of 25 cents or $5 per pass, April 1st, and another increase January 1st of 2016. On that point, there was also our wastewater treatment plant annual report and our annual water system report. Both lengthy documents, both quite interesting. They are on our website for anyone who's interested to see, to learn more about our water and wastewater system. The City Hall refurbishment was also on the agenda. We've had that discussion here tonight. We talked about the 8th Street reconstruction. As you'll recall, that those costs were it was over budget. The committee recommended, and now of course I can't bring it up, but there was about $200,000 in savings. It's still $100,000 over budget. Keep in mind though that the 3rd Avenue one was under budget by several $100,000. So the hope is with these savings that were recommended at the committee and brought forward tonight, it's hopeful that those two projects combined will come in on target. The asset management plan, strategic plan, that's also on your agenda, and I would encourage all members of council to read over that. That's how we move forward as we discuss asset management. We talked about the Brook route. This will be familiar for many, that the Brook route, the proposed design, the previous proposed design changed the direction on 14th Street, meaning those residents in the 14th Street apartments would have to cross the street. The staff worked with our consultant and came up with a plan that doesn't have to happen. So I guess the bottom line is the route will continue on the same side on 14th Street, and that issue has been taken care of. In fact, now to make that happen, the bus has to actually go right by Councillor Dodd's house to make that change happen. So he can trade his car in. There was a suggestion to have the bus run through the parking lot at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center. The committee did not recommend that. They felt that, understood why it was brought forward. There were some concerns about having it go through the parking lot, but the committee felt it was best to keep it out on the road. And I believe, yes, that's all the matters before us from operations. So I'd move those minutes for adoption.
Okay, Councillor Lemon.
One question I have, is there not a path down from, I call it the Armories Road, where the bus is going to go, that goes right into that parking lot?
Sidewalk, yeah.
Yes, there is a sidewalk. I was trying to remember, and the snow is so deep you can't tell.
That was discussed, having the stop there. I think it'd be fair to say it was left with staff. There was also the concern about that, if you're going at that corner, the people at the lights at 7th Avenue, perhaps it's too far away from them. You know, you fix one problem and start another one. So staff, that was raised with the staff that might be a suggestion to have the bus stop right there at the Armories, at the Armory stop. But that was sort of left in the hands of staff to look at both options and see which one might work best.
I think the best option would be both, because you don't want people going from the rec center, especially kids, crossing 10th Street if it can be avoided. And I think if there's demand, we'll soon find out whether or not, because if people don't use it, the bus doesn't stop, so it doesn't cost you anything.
Okay, so Councillor Thomas.
And just since we're talking about it, I know that the city made a great effort to keep the sidewalk clear from the location of the new bus stop into the rec center, though one day when I was there for a workout, it was pointed out to me that cars were actually parking on the newly cleared sidewalk because they felt it was a part of the parking area. And I just wondered if for next winter we could consider some sort of signage or some better way to delineate what is sidewalk and what is parking lot. And I think it had to do with just a bit of build-up around the curb there that they thought they could back right up.
Okay, so
We can cover that off, Your
Councillor-
Worship.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Gregg?
Just a couple things within these minutes that I want to bring up. One is that engineering brought back to committee a request for $15,000 on the Kenny Drain when it had been already cut just previously to that from their 2015 budget. It's a little upsetting to me why they would come back within weeks then for that same request. And I also want to take a moment, it's in here for us to be able to be further educated on oil grit separators. It was examined as something we could eliminate from the 8th Street reconstruction project for about $32,000 in savings. Educating myself on the oil grit separator, they are largely used at gas stations or near gas stations, industrial, commercial, and institutional sites, automotive service stations, and city properties such as public works yards, arenas. This is information that comes from whether it's a Mississauga official planning document or federal government of Canada. You know, this is Canada Mortgage Housing federal government standards on oil grit separators. So I'm just wondering if, I don't want this to fly by, but here's some opportunities that we're spending money that perhaps we could more closely examine.
Mr. Becking?
Your Worship, the phrase oil grit separators is a generic term that applies to a whole host of devices intended to remove suspended solids from drainage. In an application in a public works type facility or something like that, the primary purpose is for the removal of oil and grit from drainage. So it's the stuff that drips off the bottom of trucks and so forth. In a street application, these devices are frequently, their one trade name is Storm Scepter. And the intent of these devices is to reduce the amount of suspended solids within storm runoff. To that end, they're less oil grit separators and more grit separators, if you will. They provide enhanced treatment of stormwater runoff before it's discharged into the river and ultimately into the bay. So it was identified as a potential price reduction or cost reduction strategy, but it's not without a cost in terms of the impact on the environment. Certainly we hold developers to that standard, and we should, the committee felt that it was appropriate that we should hold ourselves to the same standard.
Thank you. Did Ms. Coulter, did I see your hand going up?
Thank you, Your Worship. If there's a report coming back, I think it would be appropriate for the committee to hear the provincial policy and the city's official plan with respect to stormwater management. It might help understand why it is, in terms of treating stormwater, both quantity and quality, why it's important to have these types of features in the facilities we're building.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McManaman, your hand's
Just,
up.
I would just add to Mr. Becking's comments, the committee did discuss this 32,000 at great length and felt that this was a water quality issue and that, yes, you could cut $32,000. They'd already found $200,000 in savings. And again, keeping in mind the discussion I mentioned earlier that the 3rd Avenue East is under budget, it's felt between the two that this was money well spent as far as water quality. So that was the committee's view.
Okay, other comments? None? Okay, so Councilor McManaman moved approval of the minutes of Operations Advisory Committee. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I'm going to jam in here almost as 12C5, although not on the agenda, the Parks and Rec minutes from March 12th, 2015, if you want to present those now.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. And the reason I would, first of all, apologize to Council, the reason these are late breaking, you'll see in the minutes, we'll discuss in a minute, there is something that needed to be approved this evening. So that's why it's here. This was the meeting from last week. A letter came forward about Jervis Bay Park. This is the 75th anniversary of the sinking of the Jervis Bay and Owen Sound's first casualty, World War II. A resident asking for the city to take a look at that park and have perhaps some commemoration around that event. So we're, as you'll see in the minutes, looking at the park and also talking to some of our partners on how that might take place. The municipal tree inventory, you'll recall from last year, that inventory was about half done. This is started with the Emerald Ash Borer discussion. How many ash trees do we have in Owen Sound? And has branched out from there. The discussion that this money is in the budget. The discussion was to have hire a contract staff to complete the inventory. We thought we'd have better control and get more work done by completing that this summer with the contract staff member. And as I said, that is in the budget. And the last, the part that's pressing here, the Y is running their annual day camp. They'd like to do it at Victoria Park. They have a partnership with the Agricultural Society to use the grandstand. They wanted they need council's permission to book the field, to use the field and the surrounding grass area at Victoria Park. That's the part they'd like to get moving on, the booking the camps and start advertising, that type of thing. That's why this came late breaking. There is a fee involved, of course, for the city to rent the park, a small fee, and I believe, yes, that's it. And so I would move the adoption of these minutes as well.
Okay, question from Deputy Mayor Wright.
Just a couple of things. I think that one motion, you better change the date, or you won't get the person hired till 2105. It's just a typo. And my question about the recreation, the use of Victoria Park up there, they talk about the cutting of the grass and the cleaning up of the, so is the city going to maintain that property? Is the city going to look after it for nothing?
No, they'll be responsible to clean up, their own trash. We have regular trash cleanup there. It would be anticipated, I guess there'd be some increase in that. We also cut the grass, I think it's either weekly or every 10 days up there as well. They would be renting the green space similar to any other user group that was renting. There is a fee involved, it's $50 a week. There was some discussion around that. How do you arrive at that fee? That was, I think it's $10. We charge minor sports groups for an hour and a half to book that field. So it was felt, how often are they going to be on the grass? It's sort of, this is the first year that they're booking it, so we'll have to see how it works, but this was the starting point. So it's $50 a week is the fee.
Councillor Lemon.
I'm glad to see we're going to look at the pillars at Jervis Bay Park. There actually is a descendant of the young man that was killed, his family that still lives in this area. And it's really a shame to see the pillar on an angle, which has been ever since the 8th Street Bridge was reconstructed. And it was supposed to have been straightened at that time, and hopefully this will lead to its straightening. It sounds very nice to see a park allowed to deteriorate, particularly Memorial Park.
So I think I'm calling a vote, aren't I? Yes, all in favor of those minutes? All carried, thank you. Down to 12D, which are the minutes of the in-camera meeting for approval from March 2nd, 2015. Anybody? Yeah, Councillor Deputy Mayor Wright has moved that. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now we're down to other business, starting with Councillor Gregg. I believe he wished to discuss budget.
Thank you, Mayor Boddy. I'll take this opportunity to thank Councillor McManaman because he's taught me that the importance of doing a good job of explaining this to those that may be watching at home as well, when it's maybe not so clear on the screen, and to take my time here and explain this out. But I have thought I cannot support a budget that's increased $1,031,835,000 or $1,031,835 in new spending. But if I can't support it, I had better have some reasons why or some alternatives. So what you're seeing in front of you is a worksheet. At the top is references to CPI, which is the Canadian or Consumer Price Index. And the Consumer Price Index, essentially inflation, closely mirrors CPI, and CPP and OAS, which are the income streams for a great many in our community, as well as wage increases for a lot of people in our community, are derived directly from the Consumer Price Index, that CPI number. We have over 4 years had substantial increases in spending on the residents of Owen Sound. And what I'm making note of here tonight is while people have railed on our police and fire, and they are a large consumption of our tax dollars, there's other areas which we are seeing large increases in. One of which is our library, and it has a cumulative 3-year increase of 12.24%. That compares to our fire, which is approximated at 6.66%, and police increases of 12.4%. So in recognition that in the past year, book circulation was down 8% at our library, library visits were down 3.8%, membership was down 1%, I cannot support the tax increase that they were looking on our residents, they were going to our residents for. So I am requesting that $70,000 be removed from the library budget, that $6,000 be removed from the professional development, $2,500 from telephone, and $1,500 from the office supplies of the art gallery. And may I note that per person in Owen Sound, we still would have $12.97 support to our local art gallery. That would compare to Windsor, which was $2.20 per person when their contribution ended in 2013 when the city had to purchase the art gallery to prevent bankruptcy, and London, which is $4.31 per person. I have other small savings through some of the departments which are noted there. Essentially what I'm getting to is $107,000 and $107,612 in savings, $4,500 from reserve in savings for not constructing the guardrail on the fitness trail. I've spoke to workers who have drove tractor on that trail, and they have done so for many years, don't feel it's a safety concern to themselves. So I spoke with people included. I haven't spoke to anybody that wants that money spent on that project, so I can't support it. This is a decrease, which would bring our overall decrease, or our overall increase down to 3.98%. It would not cut one job, and it would maintain the same provision of service level to the public with no reduction in the service levels. And might I note that should the library choose to not purchase self-service checkouts and to reduce their budget by $40,000, they would still have a budgetary increase this year in real dollars. It would not be a cut. It's some spending reductions. I think it's incumbent upon this council. I'm trying to represent those who voted for me and trying to get our tax increases down to a level which are more closely aligned to what they get as an annual pay increase, because they do not have the increases to keep taking money out of their pocket. So that is a motion I'm putting forward. It's a budget vote, so I would request that be a recorded vote. But I would take some questions, I guess.
I'm going to go to Mr. Ritchie first because we just had a public meeting on the presentation of the budget. What does that mean? What do we have to do if we're going to change it? Just so we know the
Certainly,
process.
Your worship, it's always council's prerogative to change the budget if they wish at this time. And I am going to defer somewhat to the chair of the library board for, I believe what we would, if council should opt to do that, would be not approving their budget. Again, the library is a separate board that presents their budget to council. They present them to all council, and in the agreement there's a formula there for the overall budget being accepted, but I believe technically this council, if they agree with Councillor Gregg's recommendations, would just not approve that particular budget, and then it would be back to the board to look at what they would do, to present a new budget to all of the councils. Certainly on the other recommendations, if council wishes to recognize Councillor Gregg's motion and look at these items, staff could revisit them, and I believe at this time we would probably want to hold another public meeting as quickly as possible, perhaps 2 weeks, certainly no more than 2 meetings from now to present a new budget document to council.
So if I'm understanding you, we probably would need Councillor Gregg his motion to be to ask for a report on these changes, not necessarily pass them tonight, because we'd have to go to the public meeting before we could pass them. If I got that right?
That would be my recommendation, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Thomas first.
I will not be supporting the motion. I just want to bring a little bit of historical perspective to bear here on what goes on over at the library. You know, we had a report over there 3 years ago that detailed the fact that the library was actually about 5 staff short of where it should have been. It was after many, many years of attempting to get new staff hired. We were successful 3 years ago in having a new staff person added, but only after we took the dramatic step of closing the library, announcing we would be closing the library on Mondays. The community backlash was tremendous to that idea. These changes that Councillor Gregg are proposing, in my view, strikes at the very heart of this community and what it's all about. That library is the best used municipal building in Owen Sound. Visitors are down 3.8%, but we still had 210,000 people through our doors last year. That's a lot of people. The library is the place where people go to learn, they go to upgrade their skills, and they go, quite frankly, when it's cold outside. Now, in terms of the changes suggested, I think that there's a couple of issues we've got to consider. The retaining wall has now been identified as a risk. It's a problem. So what are we going to do about that? If the library, if this goes back to the board and we say, all right, well, we choose the retaining wall, what kind of a situation does that put us in then? And I think we all around this table know the true cost of neglecting infrastructure for too long. This is probably a job that should have been done years ago. And trust me, our board goes over these things because the last thing we want to do is come in with increases that are out of line. In terms of the self-checkout, that goes back to my first comment of the staffing issues at the library. Our library is open longer hours than any library of its size in the province with fewer staff. The self-checkout is a step that we're taking. Rather than adding more staff to the library, we want to use our time and energy more efficiently. And that's what the self-checkout speaks to. And that's why it ends up on here. You know, I appreciate that taxes are high and we want to save money wherever we can, but I'm certainly not going to support the best used building in this community being singled out arbitrarily just because we can. Thank you.
Councillor Lemon, your hand was up.
Yeah, there's parts of this that I certainly agree with, but the retaining wall at the library, we go back a long time when we haven't looked after buildings. Earlier tonight, we found out just how bad shape City Hall's in. and we're looking at spending, I hope not, but a lot of money. And the retaining wall, if it fails, what does that mean? Well, we have an engineer on staff in the room tonight, and if that retaining wall fails, it's going to cost you a lot more to repair after the fact than before the fact. One of the reasons we're rebuilding 8th Street East Hill is because the walls on the north side are failing. This is not an operating cost. This is clearly a capital cost. Now, in respect to staffing at the library, I voted for and supported, and I even may have made the motion to agree to adding the additional position to the library a number of years ago. Why? Because it was needed. Because we were so far understaffed, it was incredible. And I agree with some of these, with most of these reductions, but the library one of them is a capital save, I call it. Same thing we're going to have to do to this building. The same thing we're doing to, somebody's going to have to do to the courthouse and a whole bunch of other buildings that are, and Mausoleum we did the same to. And the other is the self-checkout. Why I support this is because technology has changed. I can go back to when Ms. Hawken was the chief librarian, and they had a little rubber stamp and they stamped your book. And now we are into the time of the computer where they can scan it, and they're going to self-checkouts in grocery stores. I've been in a number of those, and other stores as well. And I would like a report on this, but I would like, when we deal with it, to deal with it in parts, because I can support some of these cuts, definitely. But the library I'm having a little problem with, particularly the retaining wall, that is not a library choice. That's a library necessity. And I think we have an engineering report to that effect.
Done? You're finished, Councillor Lemon? Trying to figure out how Councillor Lemon went from the Mausoleum to the self-checkout, but anyway.
Simply, we didn't look after the Mausoleum and look how much it's costing.
That was humor. It was an attempt at humor. I failed. Councillor Gregg.
And I understand very much the importance of the retaining wall and its need for safety, and that's a capital issue. But when you're in business and you have the mandate to lead, you have got to make some tough choices, and it is in there as a choice. And if the choice was to go with the retaining wall, I reiterate that the self-service checkouts maybe should be put off for 1 year, and that would still then have a $25,000 reduction as the own sound component from the operating costs, and it's still, with that $40,000 overall reduction, will be an increase in the operating budget to the library. It's not a cut to the library's operating budget. So I just want to make that clear. It comes down to the tough choices that one has to make to be able to manage their costs and run a business.
Any other comments from anyone that we haven't heard from yet? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't sure whether I was going to speak tonight or not, but I pretty well had to there when we talked about tough choices. Let's talk about tough choices. Tough choices is when there's a room full of developers, and to tell them that we're not going to give a DC holiday. This council increased the budget by $50,000 for a DC holiday. Tough choices are last week when we had an incredibly worthy project before us, and we increased the budget, or we decided not to collect fees of $114,000. Those two decisions alone increased this year's budget and next year's budget by $164,000, or lost opportunity in collections. My point isn't to revisit those decisions. My point is to point out that the tough decisions are required. They're required each and every week, and each and every time this council is asked for money that is outside of the scope of the Municipal Act. for their municipal responsibilities. I would congratulate Councillor Gregg. This is an excellent document. You've obviously put a lot of time and effort into this, so I congratulate you for that. You've obviously gone through many, many lines here to get to these points. My question is, and as far as a report goes, if we set the library aside for a moment, all the rest of these, perhaps they're possible, perhaps they're not. There's a car allowance in here. That could be contractual. Internet access at one of our facilities. Cutting postage. Again, I don't know whether those are possible or cutting out telephone lines. I don't think we have the information here tonight to know whether, some of those, as Councillor, I think Lemon said, some of these sound good, but I don't think we have the information tonight to say, yes, let's cut, the internet, cleaning supplies at one of our facilities. We don't know that. Is that possible? Just cutting it on paper and have Mr. Ritchie or Mr. Beckin come next week and say, well, that, cleaning supplies have gone up in cost. So I certainly would support, if we set the library over here, all these other issues for a report to come back and just see where we're at with them. I'm not sure what they total, maybe $40,000-ish, something like that, 35. I'd certainly support hearing more about that before we pass the budget, but I just don't think we have the information tonight to say, yes, cut the car allowance, because we might get a report next week that says, actually, you have to give the car allowance, it's in their contract. And as far as the library goes, we talk about you have here 4% tax increase. Our tax increase, as explained by Mr. Ritchie, is 2.1% this year. 2.1%. Now, people are going to say, well, you can't count the county. And my answer to that is, yes, you can. We are part of the county. The county system, the provincial government uploaded many social service costs in the past 2 years, from the county. The whole point of that was, and I congratulate Grey County Council for this, they have passed that savings along, those reductions along to their member municipalities. Other counties have not done that, just by the way, some not too far away either. But so the reason Grey County's came in at -2%, a good portion of that is uploads from the provincial government. This is how the system was supposed to work. Provincial government looked at it, said maybe it's unfair that municipalities are paying these costs. They uploaded some of those social services costs, and it benefits the city of Owen Sound. It benefits every municipality in Grey County. So our number right now is 2.1%, and that includes fixing this safety issue at the library. That's a number I'm comfortable with. So, but I wouldn't mind hearing. So that's my answer to the library question. I wouldn't mind hearing about these other suggestions. This is we had 4 days of budget. We went over things like this. These are some new ideas. I'd like to hear from staff whether they're possible on these other issues. Thank you.
I'm just going to go to Mr. Ritchie first, and then to Deputy Mayor Wright next.
Your Worship, if I could, I think if you'll allow me about 3 minutes, I can go through every one of these items and give you my opinion. I will not discuss the library issue. I believe they have a board they report to, as well as the art gallery has a separate board. Very quickly, the other issues, the guardrail. Your senior management team attends meetings. Certainly, over the last several years, employee safety has been a very important issue on our meeting agenda here as senior managers. We are responsible for making sure employees' workplace is safe. Our understanding is, in spite of and we face this all the time, we have some employees perhaps don't want to wear safety equipment. Our job is to make sure they do. This has been designated, I believe, as an area, irregardless of what certain employees may think, that may be unsafe. Your senior management has suggested we do that. That's my understanding of that issue. The car allowance, you're correct, that will be a contractual issue. We've changed staff there, and I believe the staff member is entitled through his collective agreement to a car allowance. The photocopying, quite honestly, that's there are costs that we just incur if we employ people. They do photocopy still, and that number will be what it'll be regardless of what I make that budget. But the clothing allowance, again, I believe that will be a contractual obligation to those people there, that they will buy the clothing and that expense will be there. Professional development, again, as a senior management team, we don't get our staff away enough for professional development. So I would certainly be cautious in any department of taking that out. Quite often, collectively, we don't spend our professional development budgets, but we should be. Our staff are falling behind. Internet access, that is a contractual obligation, part of our agreement to the Julie MacArthur Rec Centers, that we will provide internet access there. It was a give and take in that agreement, and that was one of the ones that the city took on. The cleaning supplies, I'm going to guess it's based on historic use of cleaning supplies. I could be wrong. Membership, non-departmental, the only membership there that I recall is to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So they give us a fee based on our size, and we pay it. I don't believe that I can do much there. The fee will be what our size is, being 22,000 population. Postage, the home department for postage is non-departmental. We have all our postage expenses for the equipment, all of the supplies. We charge it out every month, and the net that we don't charge out sits there. Again, it will be a cost to the city of doing postage. The one in my area, that particular one, I am over 5%, is because this year I consciously made an effort not to charge as much of my and my one staff member's time out to water and wastewater. Thus, the rest of my budget went up. My total expenses, other than wages in my department, I believe are less than $4,000. There's not much I can do there. Fuel, our actual fuel last year, I looked at that amount, it was $162,000. We have reduced the budget after some discussion with council fuel throughout the city. I can tell you, I looked at that account in January, fuel in that particular line, we spent $28,000. January was very busy with snow. I believe across this budget, for the work that the council wants us to provide to the taxpayer, I think it's pretty tight, to be honest with you. I would hesitate to take these out. Thus, the whole recommendation to council that in the course of time, we do a thorough review of all the services we provide, with all the information, all the options for ways to provide that service if we continue to, and look for savings within them that are in the long run, savings that we can realize, that we can actually reduce the budget and produce to council. Again, through the course of time, analysis and proper reporting and thorough discussion from council, from the ratepayers who will see the effect of any changes we make, as well as on the budget. But again, that's ignoring the two that report to separate boards. But we're certainly always, I have a staff member here who is reviewing the telephone bill today. But I'm not sure what realistic savings I can tell you there that we'll actually realize. We can reduce the budget, but we have contractual commitments for the suppliers that provide us with that. But we have looked at that in my time here. At least every 3 years, we go through all of our communications bills and try to revamp them all. So that was probably more than my 3 minutes, Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Scott for providing this. Scott, you and I did have a conversation. When you look at the overall increase in our budget of over 4%, it does make a person stop and think, boy, that's a pretty high increase. We're very fortunate that the county has come in with a -2 because it's what it's done. It's given us an opportunity to put the money where we need to put it this year and bring us in at a reasonable rate of budget. I left Scott and I did some work on my own and I looked at the OOMP grant. Now that you went over that again tonight, it was $200,000 we lost, which is what of percent? That's almost a full percent. Almost a full percent. The increase in our fire and police contract, our fire contract especially, cost us $350,000. That's 1.5% anyway. So we're up to 2.5% already there. We're doing 2 major projects. One major project, 3rd Avenue, is being covered partially by the county, and they're working with us on that. So that saves. But we also got government funding on that. So how many, you say 3 major projects?
Wastewater.
Well, the wastewater treatment, well, that's a huge project. But the 2 projects I'm talking about are the improvement in the roads that we're doing, which are major projects. And I took a look at those and I thought, you know, really, I think we're doing really well coming in, what we're coming in with and accomplishing all of that. And then the wastewater treatment plant on top of that. I am thrilled that we are going with a 3% water increase. I think that is a real bonus for us this year. I think what Scott has done, has pointed out to us, and what Raina's just said, is that we need to be cognizant, all of us, not only staff, but all of us, on what we're spending and on what we're asking the city to do for us. So every time you talk about $500 out of photocopying, every time we ask the city to photocopy something for us, it's costing money. So I mean, we're expensive too. I think that we took a real leap of faith when we gave a holiday on development charges and also gave the freedom to the hospice to build without the city charging permit fees and development charges and services, etc. This is going to bring employment to our community. Hopefully with the development charge holiday, it will bring new people, new housing, new building into our community. So these things all add up. I think that the steps that this council is taking is steps in the right direction, and maybe it's not going to be fruitful maybe for the first year or two, but it will show up eventually, and it will benefit all of us if we go the way we're going. Yes, we need to be very, very careful. The county will come in with a little bit of money next year, but we won't have the expenses next year that we're putting out this year, probably because there won't be infrastructure money from the government. But you talk about the 15,000, that Kenny Drain is also a project of the county, and the county is a partner in that Kenny Drain project. And if we have shovel-ready projects and there is infrastructure money, then we can apply for it. So these things, you know, they do cost us money, but in the long run, will save us money. So I'm not going to go on any further, but that's the way I feel about it. And I think Scott did a great job bringing all this to our attention. And however, Scott, I'm not going to support the motion.
Just before I go to Councillor Lemon, I just want to get a correction or information from Mr. Becking. Deputy Mayor Wright just said that the water increase is 3%. It's 2.5, is it not?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Well, it's 2.5 and 3.5.
Yes,
For
the
wastewater.
the wastewater component is 3.5, the water component is 2.5.
Just so we get the...
So it's a
right
basic and
information.
average of 3%.
That's correct.
Yes.
Councillor Lemon?
Yeah, there's a couple numbers here that really amaze me. Bayshore phone costs, $5,300? That seems inordinately high. And a couple of the other phone costs seem extremely high.
Your Worship, if I could,
Please.
they're based on historic costs. I mean, absolutely, with some time, we can tell you exactly how many lines are going into the Bay Shore. I can tell you it's based on historic costs. I can tell you my communications director over here has looked at it today, and we could take a full report to council so you are completely aware of where our cost for telephone lines is throughout the corporation. Those will very much be based on historic costs, so unless we're prepared to, and again, perhaps we can do that, looking and say to our facilities manager, do you need all of those lines? But it will be a change in the service because we are paying our provider for those services today.
The attack pay for their own lines, right?
The attack would pay for their own phone services, that's correct.
It just, thanks to Scott for bringing this up, but the alarm bells went off when I saw $5,300 to the phone cost to the Bay Shore. And I tried to find the Julie MacArthur Rec Center, and I don't see a costing on phone for it. Maybe I'm missing it. Is that one missing? Okay, I apologize. Sorry, and the other one on the postage. A lot of the postage gets written back to the water system and sewage, does it not? Like the cost of sending out all the water bills.
That's all through the utilities, but it's all audited and tracked. They pay
Yeah,
their
so
own-
we're
they
not,
pay their way.
doesn't go on the tax bill, that
No, it
goes
does
on the
not.
water bill.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap this segment up. Councillor Gregg, did you want to reword your motion in any manner, given that if you want information back, or whether you just want to continue to move that these changes be passed? It's up to you.
Well, I have one question. We haven't seen the final 2014 numbers yet. How can we vote on the 2015 budget when we haven't even seen the year end for 2014? Like, we don't know if we came in over budget or under budget.
Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, as I have verbally told council, we had some divisions of the city that came in on budget in 2014. We certainly have some divisions of the city that did not come in budget on 2014. We are still compiling those numbers, working with those staff to get those numbers as accurate as we can when we present them. I will have a report to Finance Advisor at the end of this month, very much bringing 2014 into light for council. I don't, it's no secret, certainly our roads division is well over budget in 2014. Other divisions have had better years, to, quite honestly, in some areas to understaffing where we have not replaced staff. But those reports will be coming to the Finance Advisory again, and the management financial statement at the end of March. I am working very hard to see that it isn't a deficit, and council will be aware of any recommendations made to get there.
Yeah, so Councillor Gregg, you have a motion on the table.
That's that's just very surprising to me that it will then, last year's year-end numbers will go to committee in April, and then they'll come to council mid-April before, and we've been asked to vote on 2015 a month ahead of that.
This is not uncommon in the municipal world, Your Worship. I don't know what more to say. It's not uncommon that we have to get one budget prepared before the other year is completely closed off. Not uncommon at all. Many municipalities in Ontario will not have their financial statements audited and presented to council until well after mid-year. It's not uncommon.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gregg, you have a motion on the floor.
Well, I will leave the motion as it is. There is a lot of work goes into it. I stand by it. It's not a reduction in an overall budget. Using the library, for example, again, it's still, no matter how you slice it, would leave them with an increased operating budget. There's been a lot of work in these line by line. I don't even think there's any reductions in these line items. Cleaning supplies last year was $2,000. I'm asking to reduce it by $500. That still has them going up 25%. I think this is fair and reasonable, and I'll leave it as is to be voted on.
Okay, and I understand it's recorded vote. Go ahead.
Councillor Dodd?
And not in favor?
Councillor Gregg?
In favor?
Councillor Lemon?
Not in favor.
Councillor McManaman?
Opposed.
Councillor O'Leary?
Opposed.
Councillor Thomas?
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Wright?
Opposed.
Mayor Body?
Opposed?
Motion is defeated with 7 opposed and 1 in favor.
So next on my list, I've got Councillor Thomas. Councillor Gregg, thanks for the work, and thanks for keeping us on our toes. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Your Worship, I just wanted to make the public aware that the City of Owen Sound, through its Economic Development Department, has partnered with the Y Employment Service again this year to hold a community job fair. My teenagers will all be there. Wednesday, March 25th, from 1 o'clock until 6 o'clock at the Bayshore Community Center. And so far this year, there are 17 employers lined up, including Tenneco, Graber's Health Services, Chapman's Ice Cream, the YMCA Day Camp, and of course the City of Owen Sound. So again, just for those who may be watching at home, that's the Community Job Fair at the Bayshore Community Center, Wednesday, March 25th from 1 until 6 o'clock. Come prepared with your resumes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becking, you had 2 reports, I think a short one on update on frozen pipes.
Yes, Your Worship.
Given the temperature in here, and because we're not running the frozen pipes through this room, which would have thawed them, I'll ask you to keep it fairly brief, please.
I will endeavor to do so, Your Worship. You going to click them? Okay, next. Since I was last before you, Your Worship, things have changed somewhat dramatically.
The microphone.
There you go. There's where I came to speak to you last. By my reckoning, we had approximately 250 frozen services at that time. We had a backlog of about 140, and we had resolved just slightly more than 100 services. As of last night, we've received notification of 305 services. We've resolved 240, and therefore our backlog is 64 services. So we've managed to get back ahead of things. Next. We are still asking the public to run their water in the designated areas. And in addition to that, so in those areas, we want people to keep their water running at about a half a gallon per minute, which is the same as about a pencil thickness in terms of a stream of flow from your tap, at least one tap. If residents have had a frozen service and it's been temporarily resolved through either temporary mains or through connection to their neighbors, we ask that they maintain at least one tap in the building on full bore 24/7 until further notice. The reason for that being that these hoses are on the surface, they're exposed to the temperatures, and they will freeze up, and they have been. We are still experiencing difficulties. We had another 6 services over the course of the weekend, which were reported as frozen. So, notwithstanding the fact that we're getting nice, warm spring temperatures or late winter temperatures, the fact remains is people have to continue to keep their services running. Next. This map is difficult to see, but the green dots represent services that have been resolved, and the red are still services that are frozen. You'll see a number of areas of clusters. One area in particular, which was resolved this weekend, was in the 8th Street A East and 5th Avenue A East area around Ryerson Park. We had to go to the almost second to last step, which was to put in a surface temporary main to service about 20 or 25 houses and get them back up and running. And we've accomplished that. At this stage of the game, we have no more large clusters, so it's going to be a series of one-offs where we're going to, and many of these one-offs are in fact services that we haven't been able to find another connection for or some other means of providing water. At this point, we're into thawing services, which is a time-consuming process. Just before I leave that slide, I have to report to Council that we have a split main at the intersection of 2nd West and 10th Street. The intersection is presently closed, and it will be closed until further notice. We'll have to get in and replace the main, and we don't know how far it's split. So heads up to Council and to members of the public who may be watching. Traffic conditions in the city are going to be a little congested for the next little while. We'll endeavor to provide detours, but at the end of the day, we're pretty much constrained in terms of what we can do. We'd like people to use 9th and 8th as east-west corridors, but unfortunately they all terminate right at 2nd West, so traffic will have to carry on over to 3rd West, before turning north and getting back on 10th.
So coming in from the west on 10th Street, best to turn at 3rd, go across to 9th Street or 8th Street to get across the city.
Well, actually, you have to, 3rd only goes as far as 8th Street.
8th Street, yeah. And if they're coming in from the north, they can take First Avenue to the Shoppers Corner and get onto 10th Street Bridge there? Or
That's
will that be
correct.
closed? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So just 2nd Avenue west and 10th Street west are going to be problems for the next several hours?
24 to 48 hours, yes.
2 days. Okay, good. Thank you.
Finally, just to give you some comfort that things are under control, the demand on the plant has been very stable over the last number of days, and we saw a bit of a spike last evening, which we attribute to the new services coming back online. So it spiked up around 12.8, but it's certainly well within acceptable parameters, so I'm not concerned about it, Your Worship. Anyway, that concludes my report.
Okay, quick questions, Councillor Lemon.
Being one of the people who has their water running for obvious reasons living on 12th Street, do we know roughly how much longer we're going to have to do that?
No.
Oh. Depends on
Frost is still down 8, when we break down to deal with these mains, frost is still down 8 to 10 feet. The main that's split is 3'2" below the surface of the road. It's amazing that it managed to run at all, quite frankly.
And Councillor Thomas?
I'd just like to say again, Mr. Becking, what a great job you and your staff are doing. I hope you'll pass that on. I don't think we, as a council and as residents of Owen Sound, can say that enough, because this has been unprecedented this year. Your work has been flawless, and your communication has been excellent. I've heard many great comments from members of the community who are fully informed and very pleased to be so. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
I'll pass that on,
I'd
Your
actually
Worship.
move acceptance of the oral report.
Perfect. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, and I would echo those comments by Councillor Thomas. My question, and it's probably not to you, Mr. Beck, and probably Mr. Ritchie, once we start getting a handle on these, complete the tasks, your tasks, then the difficult job of water bills going out comes forward. Are you anticipating that a report would come to council on how we're going to do that?
We are actually meeting as a senior management team in the morning, Your Worship, to come up with exactly that plan. Certainly, we all have ideas, but we will be more than equitable and fair to all ratepayers. But an exact plan we will discuss tomorrow, and absolutely a report will come to council. I'm hoping that we may have to invoke the plan before 2 weeks, though. But
oh, gee, I just think it is. I just think it's of such importance that it should come to council. On top of the fact we want to get the word out and advertise to people exactly how it's going to go forward. So thank you.
Ms. Corsi?
Just on that note, it would be helpful to staff as we're meeting tomorrow. It was our intention to bring you some options that are absolutely as fair and equitable as possible to our residents who have been through extraordinary inconvenience. So I'm seeing some nodding of heads on that. There will be a cost to that, but not nearly the cost of someone who's been without water for their family for a number of weeks.
Thank you. All in favor of that motion, which is to receive the report? Carried. Mr. Becking, you have another report that...
I do, Your Worship. Thank you. Through the last several weeks, staff have been working flat out 7 days a week, in some cases 24 hours a day, in order to attempt to restore services. I prepared an estimate for the month of February, and as I had previously reported to council, the bill is not small. My estimate would suggest that in the month of February we've been through a roughly $280,000 in charges that would be considered abnormal. I will not be surprised if we get to the end of this process and spend something in excess of $500,000.
That's a lot to bear for a relatively small water system. And I think it's in order, or it's incumbent upon council to perhaps speak to the provincial government with respect to some form of assistance. To that end, I circulated a report to members of council with a draft resolution for your consideration. Your worship, would you prefer that I read it, or have all members of council had an opportunity?
You know what, I think if you want to read it, it would be good to have it out.
Okay. Starting about the middle of page 2, if you'd like to follow along, the draft resolution reads as follows. Whereas a safe and secure supply of water is essential for all urban communities, and whereas small municipalities such as Owen Sound struggle to keep their water and sewer system sustainable based on their local revenues, and whereas winters are becoming more harsh, causing significant challenges for municipalities, and whereas the city of Owen Sound, like many other municipalities across the province, have experienced unprecedented numbers of water main breaks and frozen water services as a result of the current winter season. And whereas the damages to the city's water system have imposed additional and unforeseen costs on the city to be borne by the users of an already cash-strapped water distribution system. Now therefore be it resolved that, 1, the city petition the province of Ontario to provide financial assistance to recover the funds expended in response to the current crisis. And 2, the city requests the province of Ontario to initiate a program that will assist municipalities to correct deficiencies in their water systems and make them less susceptible to the changing nature of winter in the province. And that this resolution be circulated to the following for their information, support, and follow-up. The Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, local MPP Bill Walker, MPP Bruce Gray, Owen Sound, and 3, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. I think Councillor Thomas had his hand up first.
Yes, I'd be willing to move that motion, Your Worship, with one small addition on point number 2 on page 3, that the city requests the province of Ontario to initiate and fund a program that will assist municipalities. May as well get that right out on the table there.
And that's exactly what we meant, so. So, Councillor Lemon?
I don't know whether FCN would be interested in this or not, but I'm wondering about that and also OSUM. Because this is going to be largely a urban, smaller, it really hits small urbans a lot more than.
Certainly FCM is a good suggestion, Councillor. OSUM would be circulated by AMO. So
Okay.
I think it's caught under the AMO umbrella, but.
Okay, that's fine, as long as it is, but I just thought FCM because I don't know whether other parts of Canada have been hit by this, but in all my years.
There's a lot of snow in another area that they may put their hand up to.
Yeah, the 2 feet that occurred in the East Coast in the last couple of days probably is part of that, yes.
So as we've gone through this the last couple of weeks, we met on a Sunday morning about 2 weeks ago, figuring out whether we could declare an emergency or not, and came to the conclusion that we couldn't. I made some notes this morning knowing that this was coming, and the first thing on behalf of all of us in council, we want to thank our water staff who, as you say, have been going non-stop for weeks. We've added other departments, I believe, some of the road guys and some of the other people have gone in and helped. We've got contractors around the city who have stepped up and helped, and we really appreciate the hours that they've put in to try and resolve it, and the commitment is pretty impressive. Probably more importantly, we want to thank our amazing community that we live in. People have gone weeks without water. I can't imagine. I would be. I wouldn't be a nice person if it was me. I'd be. We really appreciate their patience. We appreciate everyone else's help that has shared showers, laundry, water, helped each other out. And I suppose that's kind of what makes Owen Sound interesting, is when we have real challenges, we look after each other and everybody chips in. So I want to thank everybody that has helped each other or that has put up with waiting for water. That's, I think, one of the things that makes Owen Sound special. As we looked at it, again, we didn't think that it was an emergency situation that we could apply for emergency funding and provincial help. Frozen pipes sort of came in slow. Maybe if we had had 300 plus all in one day, and the first day, things might have been different. We would have been absolutely overwhelmed. Given that it continues to climb and we've been able to little by little get caught up, I still think that not declaring an emergency is the right thing. I note from what I can see, only one municipality, being Port Hope in Ontario, declared an emergency, and that was because their main water treatment plant intake froze, and it was only for 24 hours that they declared their emergency. They got it open up, and that's a different situation than what we're in. Certainly at $500,000 cost just for us, everybody around us. I was up in Lions Head in the weekend, and every second lawn looks like a groundhog's been climbing or digging in the front lawn with hoses coming out of it. Probably a bigger percentage of houses up there than what we've suffered, but obviously smaller. The communities across this province are going to need help. We're going to need help. This was not expected. It couldn't be planned for, or maybe it's going to have to be planned for climate change going forward, but we, and I think most other communities, didn't have a plan or were prepared for this type of hit. So I think it's really important that we contact the province, get them to look at special funding, that we don't fall under that emergency, I don't think, but there's got to be hopefully funding made available to us and other communities just like us to try and get through this and get the repairs made in the next few months. So, Councillor McManaman.
I just was reading. I just noticed on the letter we copied the minister. We didn't copy the premier. Probably should copy it. It just occurred to me.
Another amendment.
Take care of it.
Councillor Lemon, I'll go back to you, and then we'll maybe call the vote.
Okay, one question I got through you to Special Engineering. Oh, sorry. One question I've got going through you to Mr. Becking. When the frost comes out of the ground, I was told years ago that that's when a lot of pipes can fracture.
That's correct.
So the water breaks aren't over when the weather warms up?
No.
Which is really scary because that can get expensive. The other thing is, should we send a letter to the opposition parties at Queen's Park as well?
We were assuming by sending it to our MPP, Bill Walker, that we'll get to.
Yeah, but there's also the NDP.
Oh. I don't think are you opposed to that? I don't think anyone's opposed. That's good. Yep.
Send it to the Globe and Mail.
And there goes our postage budget. Great. So if we can call the vote, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Becking. It's down to number 14.
The committee rise and report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wright. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 15, resolution adopting proceedings, Committee of the Whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
Great, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Notice of motion. Seeing none. 17, new business by resolution. None. Bylaws number 18.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that bylaws numbers 2015 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39 and 40 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Our business is complete. We can adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting.